Chapter 516. After returning to his personal lounge, Ding Ming rejected Lu Qing and Jun Ling's invitation to meet. The reason was simple. He needed to start converting the origin energy extracted from Gu Yu's body. This involved Xinguang technology, so he needed to keep it a secret. Although Jun Ling also had a Xinguang wrist guard, it was hard to say if its effect was the same as Ding Ming's. Jun Ling would have to figure it out himself. Her wrist guard definitely isn't a true Xinguang weapon, Little Rascal suddenly said. Ding Ming asked curiously, why not? Little Rascal said, although I don't know what kind of wrist guard Planet Madison gave her. If her wrist guard is the same as yours, then she wouldn't have been trapped in the temple's dreamscape. She would definitely have been able to walk out of it. That's why you should keep this weapon a secret. Ding Ming nodded. He walked through the lounge and opened the alloy door to the training room. On the Conqueror, every lounge was equipped with a training room. Based on Chu Xiaoqing's style, this training room was similar to the private training rooms of the Empire's dojos. Apart from the three main cabins, there was a complete set of training equipment. The walls were made of multi-element alloy and were completely sealed, so it was very private. Of course, at Ding Ming's current level of strength, he basically didn't need the sensory cabin to cultivate. He just needed to sit cross-legged on the ground and enter the elementary consciousness dimension. It was very easy for him to inspect the condition of his body. The smelting space created by Ding Ming's diamond star-fusing art was now several times larger than before. He could clearly see that there were several types of energy mixed within. First of all, the pure white energy of Xinguang technology filled most of the space. This was Ding Ming's most powerful core, as well as the fundamental source that supported the Xinguang weapon. Next was the multicolored energy that was slowly moving in the shape of a vortex. This energy was the reverse source crystal and the energy that Ding Ming had refined himself. This energy could support the operation of the first 9 origins. At the center of the vortex, there was a small ball of pure red and yellow origin energy pulsating. This was what the Divine Light Bracer had extracted from Gu Yu's body the instant he killed him. Little Rascal said, your Divine Light wrist guard is made from a combination of a small amount of antimatter, super heavy hydrogen, and pi elements. In the Mao Xing civilization, ordinary soldiers are not qualified to wear it. Only people above the rank of general can use it. Thus, it has the ability to absorb energy. For human origin ability users like Gu Yu, the energy they cultivate is easily absorbed by the wrist guard. Ding Ming was no stranger to antimatter. To put it simply, antimatter was the opposite of normal matter. It had the same structure, mass, and lifespan as normal matter. The only difference was that it had the opposite electrical properties. Humans had almost never discovered antimatter in the universe. The current Federal Empire was also unable to produce it. In theory, it could be artificially synthesized through accelerators and colliders, but in terms of time, it would take humans hundreds of millions of years to synthesize a single gram of antimatter. This was completely impossible to produce. However, Little Rascal said that this wrist guard was made of antimatter. This showed just how advanced the Mao Xing civilization was. It was not difficult to explain why a heaven-defying martial technique like Wings of Light required the support of Xinguang technology. Thus, Gu Yu's death was not unjust. It was not shameful to be killed by a weapon of the great god civilization. If he wanted to convert Gu Yu's hard and hot origin energy for his own use, he would have to put in a bit of effort. Although origin energy systems were generally divided into a few categories, in reality, each origin energy user's cultivation path was different, resulting in their own unique characteristics. Take Ding Ming himself as an example. Although he cultivated the thermal element, when he first started cultivating, he did not advance in the direction of origin energy externalization. After all, when he was in Black Gold Base, survival was his #1 priority. Almost all of his origin energy had been used to strengthen himself. Thus, Ding Ming's thermal origin energy was different from those origin energy users who walked the path of specialization. His origin energy externalization would inevitably be a materialized product of extremely high temperature, which was extremely lethal. Of course, as a strength sword, Ding Ming could also easily achieve this later on. However, Ding Ming's thermal origin energy was actually more like the hard system's coding origin energy. It was mainly focused on defense. In addition to the Diamond Star technique and Zhao's solitary sword, Ding Ming was more like a hard system origin energy user. Gu Yu's ball of hard system origin energy was obviously more powerful than thermal origin energy, which was just right for Ding Ming. Just as he was about to activate the Diamond Star fusion art, a voice suddenly echoed in his mind. Ding Ming, can you let me have this ball of energy? The person who spoke was obviously the water droplet in Zheng Ming's image. Little Rascal was immediately amused. Ah, so it's you. You're actually still alive. The water droplet had a heartfelt fear towards Little Rascal. It stammered, I'm no longer Chu Ming Liang. I'm also no longer in the form of the ancient phantom dragon. Little Rascal chuckled. It's all the same whether it's you or not. Back then, in order to deal with you, I had to go into hibernation for several years. But now, I can deal with you at any time. Ding Ming and Xiao AI probably didn't think much of these words, but the water droplet was quite clear. Mao Xing's spirit body had absorbed so much divine light energy from the temple that it had already transformed into a half-spirit body. Its strength was unimaginable to anyone else. If it was in Mao Xing's life form, even if it was a complete water droplet, it would still have to look up to him. It wouldn't even be able to think about resisting. If it did, it would die. And if it died, it would be reduced to ashes. What do you want Ding Ming's energy for? In the space of consciousness, Little Rascal coldly stared at the water droplet on the beach. The water droplet was a bit helpless. I also want to evolve. My current form isn't very good, and I can't go out yet. Look at you. You still want to go out? Little Rascal snorted disdainfully. Have you asked Ding Ming? Ding Ming frowned and said, What do you want this origin energy for? The water droplet sighed and said, Ding Ming, refining this ball of energy isn't very meaningful to you right now. With your current strength, you won't be able to make any substantial leaps in strength even if you absorb it. If you don't absorb it, it won't be a loss either. Xiao AI immediately expressed her agreement. That's right, Ding Ming. Right now, your first 10 origins are all operating at the same time. The 10th origin is operating normally, so your origin energy index is 850 million points. I've calculated that Gu Yu's ball of energy only has 38 million points after conversion. If you really want to absorb it, it won't be very meaningful. This was indeed easy to calculate. The standard for a beginner battle monarch was 100 million points of origin energy index. An intermediate battle monarch was 250 million points of origin energy index, and an advanced battle monarch was 800 million points of origin energy index. The astonishing amount of energy that Ding Ming had erupted during his battle with Gu Yu was precisely the aura of an advanced battle monarch. Coupled with the fact that he had a divine weapon like the divine light weapon, he had been able to effortlessly destroy Gu Yu. If he had absorbed 38 million points of origin energy index and still hadn't broken through the 1 billion mark, then that was the mark of a beginner battle saint. Thus, it wouldn't have much of an impact if he didn't absorb it. Little Rascal immediately began to object. Are you saying that you'll be of great use if you absorb it? The water droplet said, That's right. Gu Yu's ball of energy actually has a miraculous effect on me. Even though it's a defensive type of origin energy, I can actually convert it into something completely opposite. Once I have it, it'll be easier for me to help Ding Ming do things. Help Ding Ming do things? Are you really that kind? Little Rascal still didn't believe it. The water droplet was a bit helpless. All right, if you give it to me, then Ding Ming will have a true clone. I could do a lot of things for him. Ding Ming pondered for a moment before saying, I can give it to you, but I have a request. That is, you can't appear in the form of Big Brother Zheng Ming. Otherwise, you know that you're no match for me. The water droplet nodded. Of course I understand. Then what form do you want me to use as my original form? Ding Ming thought for a moment, then said, The Citizen Protector. The water droplet seemed to know what he was thinking. The Citizen Protector had been mediocre all his life. It was only because of the little girl's actions that he was completely awakened. Ding Ming naturally hoped that he would inherit the Citizen Protector's long-cherished wish and not become a schemer like Chu Ming Liang. An almost imperceptible star floated out from Ding Meng's forehead, flying to the center of the hall and quickly transforming into a streak of light. This was Zheng Ming's image, but a short moment later, the streak of light was surrounded by a mass of reddish-yellow energy. The energy rolled about like waves, and a moment later, it calmed down. The streak of light dissipated, and the streak of light disappeared. The image of a middle-aged man appeared in everyone's field of vision. He wore a shabby military officer's uniform, and there was a pitch-black saber hanging from his waist. His face was covered in wrinkles, and his complexion was sallow and full of vicissitudes. His appearance was truly ordinary, and he was the type that wouldn't stand out in a crowd. With a whoosh, Little Rascal floated out from Ding Meng's forehead and transformed into Mao Xing's streak of light. Wow, you're really amazing. You can take form with just a little bit of energy. Little Rascal's tone was somewhat envious. The water droplet said, "This is my first form. The Kelvin spore life forms have always been ever-changing. I'm different from you, Little Rascal. After all, you're a spirit, but I'm not." He paused for a moment, then said, "Ding Meng, look carefully. This is just a streak of light." After saying that, his entire body underwent a huge change, just like an optical computer switching images. He instantly transformed into many different human forms, and Ding Meng recognized all of them. Marshall Four Eyes, Harry, Dai Yi, Lan Bing, Junling, Lu Qing, Elephant, Little Leopard. Each of them looked exactly like a real person, and there was almost no difference between them. Little Rascal was amused. "You're basically a strengthened version of Meng Yan." The water droplet said, "I can't compare to Meng Yan. Although the streak of light looks real, it doesn't actually have any combat ability." Little Rascal's eyelids drooped. "Then what can you do?" The water droplet said, "The Kelvin spore life forms can naturally transform into their most natural form." As soon as it said that, the citizen protector collapsed with a whoosh. Ding Meng took a closer look and saw that the citizen protector had actually turned into a puddle of water, silently spreading across the steel plate. To be precise, this wasn't strictly water, but a kind of transparent liquid. It was very difficult to notice if one didn't look carefully. Little Rascal was stunned. "Huh? You have something here?" Chapter 517. Little Rascal's curiosity was justified. The pool of water on the steel plate was clearly moving, yet it could still make sounds. This is a mimicry life form. It can hide in complex environments for easy observation. As the pool of water flowed, it suddenly rose into the air and turned into a stream of air. If it weren't for Ding Meng's telekinesis vision, it would have been impossible to see it with the naked eye. This was because the water droplet had already turned into a gentle breeze, circling around Ding Meng. This is a microscopic form. It can help you better scout. As the water droplet spoke, it suddenly floated towards the wall. A miraculous scene occurred. The gentle breeze actually passed through the thick steel plate and floated into the living room outside. After circling around the living room a few times, it floated into the corridor outside. Who knew if this guy was doing it on purpose, but after circling around for a while, it randomly chose a room and went into it. There was no one in the room, and it was unknown whose room it was, but it was definitely a private lounge. The water droplet clung to the wall, corroding the steel plate in its liquid form and slowly melting into the training room inside. In the training room, dozens of afterimages could be seen flashing back and forth. The speed was so fast that it was dazzling. It was obvious that this person was a light-speed origin ability user and was currently practicing some sort of teleportation-type martial arts technique. The water droplet clung to the steel plate on the wall and turned into transparent air, like a thin film sticking to the surface. Of course, Ding Meng's telekinesis vision could also capture this scene. However, that person seemed to be a little tired after practicing for a long time. Suddenly, he recalled his doppelganger, turned around, and walked towards the southeast corner of the room. It seemed like he was going to get a towel from the clothes rack. This time, Ding Meng could no longer remain calm. This was because the person in the training room was Lu Qing. Lu Qing's outfit was really. It was hard for Ding Meng not to blush. That training outfit was completely a sky blue bikini. It was hard for him to control himself when he was drenched in sweat. Little rascal immediately jumped up and down. Yaha, Ding Ming, you actually managed to get your hands on this beauty while I wasn't around. She's so much better than Dai Ilan Bing. Look at her, but it's like 2 balls. Wow, the top is even bigger. Ding Ming immediately interrupted her. Little bad, shut up. Little rascal turned his head away proudly. Oof. Lu Qing was walking to the clothes rack. She did not take a towel first. Instead, she picked up a canned drink from the rack and drank it slowly. Halfway through her drink, she seemed to have noticed something. She suddenly turned her head and shouted, "Who is it?" As she turned her head, she raised her slender hand, and the can hit the steel wall with lightning speed. The steel wall actually cracked from the impact. At this time, Ding Ming had no choice but to withdraw his vision because Lu Qing was also a general telekinesis user. If he did not withdraw his telekinesis, his vision would collide with hers and create a blind spot. When that happened, Lu Qing would be able to guess that it was Ding Ming who was peeping at her. It would be bad if there was an unnecessary misunderstanding. The water droplet quickly floated back and once again took the form of a civilian protector in the training room. "I'm hurt, Ding Ming." The water droplet's voice sounded a little pained. "Ha ha ha, you deserve it." Little rascal laughed gloatingly. "This is what you get for peeping at a beauty changing clothes. Do you think she's weak? You're still too weak to even stand up to a gust of wind. Even a can hurt you." Weak was definitely not weak. Lu Qing was about to break through to the warlord level. Even if it was just a can, it would still be very powerful. This proved that the water droplet's various forms were not perfect. Little rascal said, "You won't be able to become a fatty in one go. You haven't completely absorbed Gu Yu's energy yet. If you can't control your own fluctuations, you'll be discovered if you encounter a warlord." Ding Ming said, "You should just obediently stay in the consciousness space and evolve." The water droplet was helpless. It once again turned into a tiny dot and floated back into Ding Ming's forehead. "But, Ding Ming, if you need me, you can summon me at any time. I'm going to hibernate now." Xiao AI said, "Ding Ming, the water droplet's current form is still useful. You can send it out to complete some reconnaissance missions outside the range of your telekinesis vision. At the very least, it could be like Meng Yin and use a different identity to gather information." Ding Ming nodded. He had the same idea. However, at this moment, the control panel at the door buzzed and a green light flashed on it. Someone outside the lounge was calling for someone to knock on the door. Ding Ming naturally did not need to open the control panel to see who it was. He could tell with a slight sweep of his telekinesis vision. Unfortunately, when his telekinesis vision swept past the door, all he saw was darkness. He did not need to think to know who it was. Ding Ming rolled his eyes. "Great. Now you barged into someone's room. You're in trouble now, aren't you?" The door to the room quickly opened by itself, and Lu Qing walked in leisurely. This time, she was definitely not wearing the bikini set. However, this set was even more lethal because it was a milky white bathrobe. The deep V-neck was very wide open, and the vast expanse of whiteness was very dazzling. In any case, Ding Ming did not dare to look at her. He politely extended his hand. "Miss Lu, please take a seat." When Lu Qing sat down on the sofa, an intoxicating fragrance wafted over. Ding Ming could only hold his breath again. Lu Qing looked at him with a smile. It was the kind of sly smile that was not a smile. "What's the matter?" Ding Ming felt a little guilty. Lu Qing looked at him for a long time and then smiled. "Ding Ming, in fact, you don't need to use your telekinesis vision." "What do you mean?" Ding Ming frowned. Lu Qing smiled and said, "If you want to find me, just come to my room. I welcome you at any time." "Well," Ding Ming suddenly blushed. Her words were too direct. Going directly to her room, what was this? However, he still had to explain. Ding Ming blushed and said, "Well, Miss Lu, in fact, it was not me just now. It was indeed not him." God knew that the water droplet's camouflage ability was so powerful that it could penetrate into other rooms. "You don't need to explain." Lu Qing gently leaned over and rested her head on Ding Ming's shoulder. The God War Alliance has always respected the strong. If you want to be with me at any time, you can. In fact, it was not only the God War Starfield that was like this. The Federal Empire was also like this. If a man was strong, a woman would be pleasing to the eye. If a man was too weak, no matter how handsome he was, it would be useless. However, when she leaned over, the V-shaped neckline was completely exposed to Ding Meng's vision. Ding Meng inadvertently glanced at it from the corner of his eye. His originally red face turned even redder. Moreover, his heartbeat suddenly increased. It was like a hammer pounding uncontrollably. Ahem. Little rascal coughed dryly. I'm going to enter hibernation mode. Xiao AI said. I'm going to enter hibernation mode too. The event recorder is being turned off. Ding Meng, you have 30 minutes. Hurry up. You guys. Is this okay? Ding Meng was at a loss. He did not dare to move recklessly. In the end, he was still nervous. He was not nervous when facing a strong enemy, but when facing a woman, he was very nervous. After all, he had no experience in this kind of thing. Who knew that Lu Qing would flip over and sit on his legs? This was simply an arrow on the bow that had to be released. It was also at this time that the beeper on the door buzzed again. The green light began to flash again. Someone had come from outside. Lu Qing did not dare to be presumptuous this time. She bounced up like a rabbit and sat obediently to the side. After the control on the coffee table was turned on, Kataga's figure appeared at the door of the room. So it's Officer Kataga. Ding Meng was a little curious. Brother Ding, good thing you're here. Kataga walked in and then was stunned. President Liu is also here. Ahem. Did I choose the wrong time? Lu Qing and Ding Meng were a little embarrassed. Ding Meng could only bite the bullet and answer, It's okay. It's okay. Please take a seat. Kataga could not help but take another look at Lu Qing. His eyes were mixed with indescribable envy. The few female stars of Water Cherry Society were highly sought after in the alliance. This Lu Qing was also a popular figure. She was usually aloof and as cold as ice. He did not expect her to wear such clothes and stay in Ding Meng's room. What if there was nothing wrong with these two people? Then he could eat the cup on the coffee table. However, on second thought, he was relieved. How powerful was Ding Meng? Any woman with a little bit of taste would be eager to get close to this kind of man. Perhaps they would do everything possible to pester him. In this situation, what was the big deal? However, when he thought about how he interrupted their plans, Kataga felt a little guilty, so he went straight to the point. Brother Ding, we have now contacted the Alliance, but the Alliance does not agree to let the Conqueror land directly on the Celestial Ring. The amount of information in this statement was a bit too much. If they could contact the Alliance, it meant that they were less than 100 light years away from the Heavenly War Galaxy. Of course, the Conqueror was designed by Xinjie, so its functions must be more powerful than Supreme. The current distance was probably still a few hundred light years away. However, the Alliance did not agree to let the Conqueror land, which was a bit unreasonable. Lu Qing could not sit still. What's going on? Is this the decision of the higher-ups? Kataga frowned. Yes, but President, she has tried her best to explain, but the higher-ups still insist on their decision. The Conqueror can land on the southern horizon. The southern horizon was not on the Heavenly War Galaxy. It was also a celestial city. Although its scale could not be compared to the Heavenly War Galaxy, it was a very important transit platform located in the space south of the Heavenly War Galaxy. It was an important hub that maintained the Alliance and other sections. Many fleets would stop at the southern horizon. Strictly speaking, the southern horizon was actually a multifunctional space station. The Alliance did not allow the Conqueror to enter the Heavenly War Galaxy. Whether it was dissatisfaction with Shi Wan or distrust of Chu Shaoqing, it was already a bad sign. Lu Qing's face immediately darkened. She had already seen the crux of the matter. After all, the Alliance had spent many years building a starship as big as Sovereign. Yet, the mission was gone just like that. The Shuain Society had to give an explanation for this. Chapter 518. In the southern sky, looking from space, it looked like a very quaint mega starship. It was a dark gray steel disk suspended in space. Although it looked large, it still could not be compared with the godly war star ring. Moreover, the southern horizon was an extremely densely populated area. Other than the designated port on the ground, the rest of the area was laid out like a city. It was a classic metal jungle. Unlike the Federation's cities, which were beautifully built, there were almost no skyscrapers here. Most of the tall buildings were ordinary buildings stacked together with concrete and steel. They looked rather bloated and did not give off a comfortable feeling. Only when one reached the ground would one see the bustling people and all kinds of shopping malls and shops. Only then would one feel that this place was lively. To be honest, this city was not even comparable to the third or fourth tier cities of the empire. The southern horizon was actually controlled by a sect that was close to the Alliance. This sect was called South City Family, so this city was called South Sky City. The conqueror naturally landed at the huge port outside the city. Because they had received advance notice, other than Ding Meng's group, only Xing Yi and Second Lieutenant Xiao Mei from the Empire's side got off the ship. The rest of the people stayed on the starship. Of course, Chu Shaoqing would not get off the ship so easily. After all, this was an unfamiliar environment for them, and the conqueror needed someone to look after it. Only a few people survived this mission. Putting Ding Meng's group aside, only Shiwen, Dong Yi, Kataga, Catherine, Kuan Ran, He Qian, Su Lingyue, and Liang Yi were left on the Alliance's side. Everyone else had died in the fierce battle between Ding Meng and Gu Yu. In fact, only the main forces of Blood War Hall, Long Voyage Alliance, and Water Cherry Society survived. The Crusade Army, Blue Light Group, and Qian Huanyu's people were all wiped out. Although the people who died were not the elites of their respective sects, it was not a pleasant result to not be able to return. A transport boat was already waiting on the tarmac. A young man in a suit was waiting with a group of followers. Lu Qing had established a telepathic link with Ding Meng a long time ago. She sent telepathic thoughts to him directly. Although the man was young, he was EU, the confidential secretary of Qin Zhongfeng, the commander of the Holy War Army. He was a talented young genius who was also the focus of the Holy War Army. Ding Meng secretly released his mind power vision and glanced at Hiyu. He realized that Lu Qing was not spouting nonsense. This Hiyu was only around 35 years old, but his aura was at the level of a high-level war elder and was extremely agile and elegant. Just this point alone was something to be proud of because Ding Meng believed that this Hiyu was definitely not just a high-level war elder. By now, Ding Meng had also figured out the so-called upper echelons of the Alliance. They were the leaders of the 6 sections. They were Qing Zhongfeng of the Holy War Army, Bai Jinlai of the Blue Light Group, Li Qingfeng of the Blood War Hall, Fang Ming of Qian Huanyu, Dong Yu of Long Voyage Alliance, and Lin Aoshue of Water Cherry Society. These 6 people formed the upper echelons of the Alliance, and together they made important decisions for the Alliance. The long voyage mission of Sovereign this time was definitely an important matter. So at this moment, Hiyu came forward and politely extended his hand. President Xi, President Dong, thank you for your hard work this time. This person was elegant and polite. There was no sign of dissatisfaction on his face. His expression was definitely sincere, but for some reason, Ding Meng felt that this Hiyu was not as simple as he seemed on the surface. Chief Xing, welcome. The God War Starfield welcomes you. Hiyu bowed slightly to Xing Yi. Thank you. Xing Yi's response was very polite. Everyone please. Hiyu gestured. The transport ship flew directly to Nantian City. Its destination was the Beijing Hotel in the center of the city. This was a 30-story building that occupied a prime location in the city. It was considered a first-class hotel in Nantian City. However, when the group entered the hotel's first-floor lobby, Shiwen and Dong Yi's expressions turned ugly. The two of them were the vice presidents of their respective sects, yet after returning to the Divine War Starfield, they weren't allowed to return to Starlink. Moreover, the person who had come was Qin Zhongfeng's secretary. He had arranged for the reception to be held in this place as a form of surveillance. Fortunately, Hiyu politely explained, President Xi, President Dong, the upper echelons of the alliance have decided to hold a confidential meeting at the Beijing Hotel. All the presidents are on their way here. The upper echelons hope that you will not leave for the time being, so we have no choice but to delay you for a few days. During these few days, you can enjoy Nantian City to your heart's content. Ding Meng and the others had different thoughts. Shiwen, Dong Yi, and the others were now thinking about how to deal with this meeting held by the upper echelons. Xing Yi had come on behalf of Chu Xiaoqing. Her purpose was simple. She wanted to replenish her energy and leave as soon as possible. Of course, Ding Meng also had this idea. Ding Meng and the others did not care. After all, they were following Ding Meng. As for Lu Qing, her attention was naturally all on Ding Meng. When the group settled down, it was already evening. Everyone gathered at the restaurant on the 6th floor of the hotel. Of course, this group of people did not need to eat. Eating was just a formality. Their real purpose was to gather information. The restaurant was very ordinary, but there were plenty of dishes. Yu had obviously arranged everything well. However, at this moment, a new face appeared beside him. It was also a young man in a suit. His appearance and temperament were quite good, but there was a hint of arrogance between his eyebrows. He had already led this person to a seat. Ding Meng quickly understood this person's identity from Lu Qing's message. Wen Yu, the eldest son of Wen Kaiming, the boss of Nanqing family. Wen Yu had been classmates with He Yu when they were in Starlink, and the two were very close. As the boss of Nanqing family, Wen Kaiming's influence was considerable. Although it could not be compared to the 6 major sects, he had a good relationship with the upper echelons of the alliance. The fact that the alliance chose to hold this meeting in the southern horizon was enough to explain many things. Of course, it would be strange if such a young master with such a background suddenly appeared in the hotel. If you said that he had nothing better to do, he would come here to play. Sure enough, after some polite introductions, He slowly opened his mouth. Commander Xing, you and our classmates when we were in the academy. After graduation, he didn't join Starlink. Instead, he came here to help his father. The Southern Horizon is the gateway port of the God War Starlink, so it has a lot of resources. This was the right medicine for the problem. The Conqueror was a foreign starship, and the God War Starlink was only a transit point. Its ultimate goal was definitely to return to the Norse Empire. Chu Xiaoqing's most urgent wish was to obtain a power source. Xing Yi was currently wearing a pair of low-light glasses and had a communicator in her ear. What she saw and heard could be seen by Chu Xiaoqing and Xinjie on the starship. At the same time, they could maintain instant communication. Oh, Xing Yi pushed up her glasses and looked at Wen Yu curiously. What kind of resources can Mr. Wen provide? Wen Yu's attitude was still very proper. He smiled politely. Commander Xing, I'm very sorry. We don't understand the parameters of your starship. If the conditions allow us to board and take a look, we can calculate the resources required by your starship. Xing Yi pondered and said, if we use the power source of a normal patrol fleet and multiply it by 10 times, do you have it? She definitely didn't say this. Xinjie was definitely secretly teaching her how to answer. Yes, Wen Yu nodded affirmatively. The Southern Horizon was huge. It was more than enough to supply 50 patrol fleets, let alone 10. Star Art smiled. Then why don't you name your price? Or an equivalent exchange is fine. This, Wen Yu hesitated before continuing. Actually, the Nanqing family wants to visit your starship. No problem. Xing Yi was very straightforward. She smiled slyly. It's just a simple visit? This was a rather sharp question. If you wanted to visit the starship, you would have to see how advanced the dragon-slaying starship was. However, the technical aspects were not something that could be learned just by visiting. Xinjie was the one who designed the various systems of the Conqueror, so Xinjie was confident in this. Cough, cough. You coughed dryly. Actually, the Nanqing family has done quite a bit of research on starship technology, but they are ashamed of their inferiority when it comes to the design of your ship. In fact, they're only asking for advice with a learning attitude. I hope that Commander Xing will not be stingy with his guidance. There's a reason why this person could be Qin Zhongfeng's confidential secretary. His words were much more convincing. Xing Yi went silent. Actually, Chu Shaoqing and Xinjie were discussing on Starship. It was obviously unrealistic to buy energy with money. Plus, the Conqueror didn't have any money. Exchanging technology for energy was impossible in the Norse Empire. However, they were currently in someone else's territory. If they wanted to replenish energy, they would have to pay a certain price. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense. After thinking for a long time, Xingyi looked up and said, "I don't dare to teach you. However, we still have to talk about the specifics of our cooperation." When Yu was overjoyed at the unexpected good news, she stood up and said, "To tell you the truth, my father has admired all of you for a long time. There's no time like the present. I'll take advantage of tonight's opportunity to invite all of you to my humble abode as guests. What do you think?" Admired everyone? This was obviously just a formality. The people he really wanted to invite were Xing, Yi, and Xiao Mei, so the others tactfully didn't say anything. However, there were still some who didn't know what was good for them. A certain straight guy jumped out and said, "Then I'll accept your invitation. I was just about to take a look around anyway." You, and when you couldn't help but look at Ding Meng at the same time. Both of them looked a little angry. Ding Meng didn't care. He waved his hand and said, "Xingyi, what do you think?" Xingyi couldn't help but laugh. However, she still had to explain, "Mr. Wen, actually, Big Brother Ding Meng used to be my classmate back in the Norse Empire. I don't think you'll mind if he keeps me company, right?" "No, of course not," when you could only reply. This was a classic example of digging a hole for oneself. Even if it was tearful, it had to be filled. Xinjie saw this scene and was immediately amused. "I knew this kid would be up to no good," Chu Shaoqing said sweetly. "Xiaoyi is still inexperienced. With Ding Meng around, she won't be at a disadvantage." Chapter 519. The Wen family's house wasn't called that. It was a manor on the outskirts of the city. It was built in a retro style, with pavilions and waterside pavilions. Birds chirped and flowers bloomed. It was definitely one of the best mansions in the southern sky. The manor was of moderate size. There were a total of 7 villas, and they were all exquisitely built. There was already a group of people waiting in the first villa facing the tarmac. Seeing this, Ding Meng had a better idea of what was going on. The moment the Conqueror landed in the southern sky, it had been targeted by the family of the southern city. It was obvious that they had planned this beforehand. The person at the front of the villa was a middle-aged man. He wasn't tall, but he was hale and hearty. His face was similar to Wen Yu's, so he must be Wen Yu's old man, the CEO of the family of the southern city, Wen Kaiming. After Yu introduced them, Wen Siming's attitude was very polite. Please come in and have a seat." The hall on the first floor had already been prepared. A few retro tables and chairs surrounded an antique tea table. The surrounding walls were filled with murals of mountains and rivers. Wen Kaiming seemed to be a fan of classical culture. Therefore, the waiter actually served tea and fruits, which were rarely seen. "Officer Xing, please send my regards to Officer Chu." Wen Kaiming was very polite. "You're too polite, Commander Wen." Xing, he was very polite. Wen Kaiming said, "Actually, it wasn't easy to arrange this meeting. After all, the family of the southern city isn't one of the big 6. It's only because Xiao Yu and Xiao Yu have a good relationship that we took the liberty to ask you out." He was very respectful. "Uncle Wen, you're too polite. It was all thanks to your help when I was studying." Ding Meng didn't say anything. He had been eating sunflower seeds. He couldn't tell what Wen Siming's true intentions were. However, Wen Kaiming didn't disappoint him. "I understand your military situation. Interstellar travel is always full of accidents. Propulsion isn't a big deal to us. We're also willing to form a good relationship with the Norse Empire." Starart smiled and said, "Then we are truly grateful for Commander Wen's assistance. However, we won't let Commander Wen's efforts go to waste." Wen Kaiming smiled. "Actually, the House of the South has also been working on Starship technology. Although we're not as good as the Voyage Alliance, we've been working hard. However, I know the importance of cutting-edge technology, so I'll skip the tour." This time, it was Starart's turn to be stunned. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Why would they give him a bunch of energy for free? Could it be that Commander Wen has some other request? Starart probed. Wen Kaiming gave him a look of admiration. Officer Xing is indeed amazing. At this moment, Wen Yu, who was sitting beside him, said, Commander Xing, actually, our request is very simple. We hope that your conqueror can send us to a place. Xing Yi frowned. Where? Wen Yu said, head 35 degrees north of the southern horizon. Coordinates TPA 009, 45D, 190 AB. 98 light years away from here, there's a planet called Planet Extreme Flame. Star definitely had not heard of this place before, so he immediately turned to look at Ding Meng. Ding Meng only frowned slightly. Xingye saw this and immediately said through the communicator, let Ding Meng make the decision. He definitely knows this place. Not only did Ding Meng know, he also had a rough idea of what Wen Kaiming was thinking. In the God War starfield, many people might be unfamiliar with the Extreme Flame Star Field, but among the stronger people, the Extreme Flame Star Field was famous. It was a very strange planet. It had a diameter of 150,000 kilometers, which was about 80 times the size of a normal habitable planet. However, the strange thing was that the planet's mass was not high. In other words, its gravity was not strong. This was because most of its interior was empty. The underground structure was very strange, and the best part was that it would not collapse. The planet of extreme flames had another special feature. Although it was not the planet of the scorching sun, its temperature was extremely high. The temperature on the surface alone was more than 1,000 degrees, and the lower one went, the higher the temperature would be. However, in such a high-temperature environment, countless strange creatures were born. After billions of years of evolution, these creatures had established their own territory. For the human world, this place was like an independent kingdom of an alien race, hence the name Planet of Extreme Flames. Planet Extreme Flame was definitely very dangerous. The starships of the God War starfield would have a hard time reaching it. The Supreme of the Alliance would definitely be able to reach it. However, the Supreme had been destroyed and the Conqueror had returned. As long as one had a little bit of insight, they would be able to tell that this dragon-like starship was definitely stronger than the Supreme. If this was a request from the Nanxing family, Ding Meng would never believe it. Not to mention other things, the harsh environment of Planet Extreme Flame made it so that origin ability masters below the level of war supremacy could not even go to the surface. They would be cooked before they even got down. There was information in Xiao AI's database that stated that many years ago, some people who were not afraid of death had gone to Planet Extreme Flame. They just wanted to try their luck and find some rare materials to make a fortune. However, none of them had returned. They had all been buried in that hellish environment. In the end, no one dared to go there anymore. In fact, it was one thing whether they could go or not. There were too many requirements, and if even one of them was not met, the plan would be ruined. It was true that origin ability masters above the level of war supremacy could go, but origin ability masters above the level of war supremacy were no fools. Who would take such a risk? And now, when Kaiming had proposed to send them to Planet Extreme Flame, no matter how they thought about it, they found it inconceivable. Thus, there was only one explanation, and that was that the so-called Planet Extreme Flame had to be closely related to the failure of the Supreme, as well as the upcoming high-level meeting. Ding Meng finally stopped eating sunflower seeds and slowly said, Commander One, I'm afraid that you know more about the situation on Planet Extreme Flame than I do. He stared at Ding Meng. Brother Ding, do you have any good ideas? At this moment, he had also figured out Ding Meng's identity. It was reasonable to say that he did not care about a minor character like Ding Meng. Shiwen had not mentioned Ding Meng's performance on the Supreme in his report. However, since Ding Meng was able to come back alive, this kind of person could not be underestimated. Ding Meng said, I don't have any good ideas. I just feel that if you don't have money in your pocket, it can't be called money. His words were crude, but the logic was not crude. You want them to escort you there, but if you don't give them any benefits, how are they going to believe you? Wen Kaiming suddenly laughed. If Commander Xing agrees, we will send our supply ships to the Conqueror in the next few days to ensure that your ship's propulsion reactor has enough energy. No matter how you look at it, your military won't lose out. Just as Xing Yi was about to reply, Chu Xiaoqing's voice suddenly rang out in her ears. Xiaoyi, don't say anything. Let Ding Meng make the decision for you. Ding Meng picked up his teacup and slowly took a sip. Then he peeled 2 sunflower seeds and sighed. It's hard to say whether we lose out or not. I just feel that with the Nansheng family's ability, it won't be too difficult for them to go to Planet Extreme Flame. Why don't you do it yourselves? Why do you have to ask others to do it for you? When Kaiming smiled humbly, your Conqueror starship is far more efficient and powerful than the starships of our God War starfield. Plus, find another reason. Ding Meng's eyelids drooped. He didn't want to listen to these excuses. Mr. Ting, there's something you don't know. The Conqueror starship is currently docked at the port of our southern horizon. Boss, when you said bluntly, Ding Meng couldn't help but turn around and look at him. His voice was a bit cold. Can I take that as a threat? He laughed dryly. Brother Ding, Commander Xing and the others are guests from afar. After all, they've come to our God War starfield. We should treat them with respect. You should know best whether you've treated them with respect or not. Ding Meng said calmly. You should know that you're the secretary of a big shot. You represent that boss. This was the key point. After all, the fact that the Conqueror starship was docked at the southern horizon wasn't something that the House of the South could decide alone. It was an order from the higher-ups of the Alliance. To put it bluntly, the Alliance had their own plans for this starship. When Siming's request to go to Planet Extreme Flame probably wasn't when Siming's own idea. Without the permission of the higher-ups, how could the House of the South dare to privately invite the representatives of the starship? Moreover, He even invited Star Art to the Wen family. This was most likely an order from the Holy War Army. Anyway, Ding Meng had already offended the Holy War Army, so he didn't need to be polite to Hiyu. Not to mention other things, the operation of the Sovereign this time had left the corpses of those old men dead. They were probably killed by Guyu. As for Sheng Tianming, he didn't even know how he died. Ding Meng and Guyu were in the midst of a fierce battle. Sheng Tianming might have been injured by the shock waves and finally died in the explosion of the Sovereign. Hiyu's face also darkened. Brother Ding, since you know the reputation of our army, I hope you won't ruin our cooperation. Ding Meng smiled disdainfully. You're clearly pushing people into the fire pit, and you still say it's cooperation. I really admire you. He said in a low voice, Brother Ding, if you insist on disrupting our discussion, then don't blame us for being rude to our colleagues in Distant Voyage Alliance. Ding Meng didn't bother to pay attention to him. He stood up and said, I thought it was something interesting, but it turned out to be useless. Let's go. It's time to go back to the hotel. We said that, Star Art and Xiaomei naturally stood up as well. At this time, Hiyu and when you couldn't sit still anymore. When you stood up with a sneer, do you really think you can walk out of this yard? Ding Meng turned his head and looked at him. He asked curiously, you? When you gritted his teeth and said, I let you come because I'm giving you face. I didn't expect you to come here to make trouble. Ding Meng had always been too lazy to talk to these people. He simply turned and walked toward the entrance of the hall. Stop, when you quickly chased after him. Chapter 520. The front yard of the villa was very quiet, and there were even the low sounds of insects chirping in the flower beds. As soon as Ding Meng stepped into the yard, when you blocked his way, Ding Meng frowned and said, What? You really want to fight? When you said coldly, the people of the Far Voyage Alliance are getting more and more out of hand. They actually dare to disturb the meeting of the Holy War Group. Ding Meng looked at him with interest. You say it like you're a member of the Holy War Group. When you said proudly, it doesn't matter whether I am or not. The important thing is that you shouldn't have come to cause trouble. Ding Meng smiled. So, you think you need to teach me a lesson, right? When you clapped his hands and said, It's good that you understand. Ding Meng's lips curled into a strange smile. Okay, I'll see how you're going to teach me a lesson today. After saying that, he didn't say anything else and just stood there without moving. Don't be fooled by his casual standing. In Wen Yu's eyes, that was not the case at all. Ding Meng's entire body was full of openings, but Ding Meng didn't seem to have any openings at all. This kind of state where something is nothing and nothing is something that could not be learned unless one had been through hundreds of battles. Yu's eyes narrowed. He was a person of this kind, and he could tell at a glance that Ding Ming wasn't simple. Wen Kaiming also walked out with Xing, Yi, and Wenyu. He didn't try to stop them. This kind of thing happened everywhere in the God Wars starfield. Often, when a disagreement couldn't be resolved, the only way to resolve it was through violence. However, he was still very confident in his son. Wenyu secretly circulated his origin energy, and a sharp aura spread out in the yard. Even the chirping of the insects in the flower beds disappeared. A few seconds later, his figure became a bit blurry. This kind of blurry was very strange. It was like a person's reflection rippling in the water, and it gave people a feeling of being in a trance. Indeed, he had the right to be proud. This level of Phantom of the Abyss martial arts technique had already reached a very high level. After about 10 seconds, the ripples disappeared bit by bit. Along with it, Wenyu's real body disappeared. The next moment, Wenyu's real body appeared on the right side of Ding Ming. She also used a hand knife to cut Ding Ming's neck. Ding Ming was still standing there casually, not moving at all. However, the position she was standing at was where Wenyu had been standing. Wenyu had hit a fake body. Her hand had cut into the fake body and directly tore a hole in the air. A wave of air tore apart, blowing the flowers and trees in the courtyard into a mess. Is this the lesson you want to teach me? Ding Ming looked at him with a half smile. Wenyu wasn't discouraged. She withdrew her hand and slowly nodded. That's right. Someone who can come back alive from the sovereign has to have some standard. Otherwise, how can he be my opponent? Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh. You really think too highly of yourself. Wenyu didn't say anything else. This time, he simply turned into 3 phantoms and attacked Ding Ming at lightning speed. His attack was quite strange. There were clearly 3 phantoms, but just as they were about to hit Ding Ming, another 3 phantoms suddenly appeared. In other words, there were 6 people attacking from 6 different directions. In an instant, a fierce wind blew in the courtyard. The Lightspeed user's transient steps and afterimages were mixed with an extremely powerful wave of air. To be honest, Xing Yi, who was watching the battle from the door, was a little shocked because she was also a Lightspeed user. If Wenyu's target was her, then she really wouldn't know how to deal with it. However, these fancy tricks could be collectively referred to as camouflage in telekinesis vision. In the face of overwhelming attacks, for some reason, many of the doppelgangers disappeared at once. When they took a closer look, Wenyu's wrist had been grabbed by Ding Ming at some point in time, and her hand chop had stopped abruptly in the air. Ding Ming's other hand also stabbed Wenyu's armpit in the form of a hand knife. His left foot lightly tapped Wenyu's knee, and Wenyu's entire body immediately went limp. Then, Ding Ming grabbed his wrist and swung it with one hand. Wenyu flew into the flower bed like a kite with its string cut, smashing into the guardrails inside with a series of crackling sounds. Ding Ming clapped his hands and laughed loudly. Now, do you still think I'm qualified to be your opponent? In the eyes of ordinary people, a war-venerable Lightspeed user was indeed not bad, but in front of Ding Ming, to put it bluntly, Ding Ming was willing to make a move. That was giving you face. When you climbed out of the flower bed with a face full of dust and dirt, flustered and exasperated, Wen Kaiming coldly said, "Brother Ding, you're quite skilled." Ding Ming turned to look at him. "Commander Wen, could it be that you also want to treat me as your opponent?" Wen Kaiming said, "I wouldn't dare. It's just that Brother Ding randomly attacked and injured people in my private residence. How can that be justified?" Ding Ming had always been too lazy to argue with such fallacious reasoning. "Commander Wen, if you're not convinced, then why don't you come up and give me a few pointers?" Wen Kaiming reached out to the knot of his tie and casually adjusted it. This movement was very subtle. When he put his hand down, the tie was also pulled off. Wen Kaiming casually tossed it aside, and the soft tie immediately straightened with a pa sound. It was like a sharp blade that spun and shot toward Ding Ming. Ding Ming still did not move. He could already feel the powerful energy attached to the tie. Sure enough, the tie exploded with a bang, halfway through, turning into a ball of flame. This ball of heat energy actually took the form of a wolf's head. The wolf's head howled and opened its mouth to bite Ding Ming, as if it wanted to swallow Ding Ming in one gulp. To be able to do this, Wen Kaiming was at least at the level of a combat master. However, it was obvious that Wen Kaiming was holding back. If he had used his full strength, this place would probably have been blown to ashes. In fact, Wen Kaiming was very cunning. He used this method of releasing his source energy to attack. To put it bluntly, he wanted to make a fool of Ding Ming. If he took it head-on, he would inevitably be injured. If he retreated, the wolf's head would turn into a large ball of flame and surround him. Even if it did not burn him to death, it would make him miserable. Then, he would regain his face. Unfortunately, Ding Ming would not let him regain his face. Since he dared to do this, Ding Ming dared to use a more forceful method to suppress him. Just as the wolf's head was about to reach him, Ding Ming suddenly struck out with his palm. He also released his source energy. What Ding Ming struck out was a large fiery red handprint. The entire courtyard was instantly dyed red. Just from its size alone, this large handprint was far larger than the wolf's head. Therefore, when the wolf's head collided with it, the large handprint crushed the wolf's head like it was crushing a chicken. Boom! There was a loud explosion. A large ball of fire appeared, and countless specks of source energy scattered in all directions. The flower beds and the outer layer of the villa were immediately set ablaze. However, this large handprint was not finished. It actually formed a fist and flew towards Wen Kaiming. Ding Ming's thought process was a classic example of giving someone a taste of their own medicine. Since Wen Kaiming wanted to make a fool of himself, then he would make a fool of himself. This fist was too sudden and too large. Even if Wen Kaiming did not want to dodge, he had no choice but to dodge. He quickly dodged to the side. It would have been better if he had not dodged. As soon as he dodged, the fist burrowed into the hall on the first floor and exploded, turning into a large ball of flames. The antique furnishings inside the hall, as well as the mountain and river murals on the walls, were all set ablaze. The entire villa was quickly set ablaze. Wen Kaiming turned around and was immediately dumbfounded. He could not help but yell, Someone come quickly. Put out the fire for me. Put out the fire." Ding Ming could not help but laugh again. "Commander One, it's time to change your residence. It's easy to catch fire in an old house." Wen Kaiming was furious. This brat actually dared to set fire to his residence. This was probably the first time in the southern sky. Wen Kaiming was about to wave his hand when He suddenly pulled him back. Uncle One. He shook his head and secretly gave Wen Kaiming a look. Wen Kaiming knew that He had always been cautious and would not stop him for no reason. There might be some reason behind this, so he could only put down his hand resentfully and call for his subordinates to put out the fire. Facing He, who was slowly walking over, Ding Ming knew that this guy was different. Wen Yu was just a combat venerable, and his father was only a combat master, so Ding Ming did not take him seriously. However, this He was different. Ding Ming did not know the depth of his strength, and more importantly, Hiyu's identity was very sensitive. Of course, Ding Ming could kill him if he wanted to, but it would not be good for Chu Shaoqing and the others in the future. "Brother He, are you trying to fight for justice?" Ding Ming asked. He shook his head and said in a mature tone, "Brother Ding, you are still young and have a bright future. Keeping a low profile is the way to go." In fact, he also knew that this Ding Ming in front of him was at least a warlord. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to embarrass the Wen family's father and son so easily. He had been wrong before. How could a person like Ding Ming be recruited by the Long Voyage Alliance? Ding Ming smiled. "I also want to keep a low profile, but you have to force me to take action." Hiyu's face was very indifferent. "Brother Ding, I'm just advising you. This time, not only the high-level officials have to attend the confidential meeting of the high-level officials, but also the people who are on the Supreme Mission. At that time, many celebrities from various sects will also come. If you attack Yu and his father now, I'm afraid that it will be disadvantageous to your Long Voyage Alliance." Ding Ming was still smiling. He had always been not good at arguing. If he could solve it with force, he would never solve it with his mouth. Suddenly, Ding Ming's figure flashed. In the vision of Xing Yi, There were only 3 almost still pictures. Ding Meng disappeared. Ding Meng flew into the air, and Ding Meng's hand knife had been chopped down. Bang! There was a muffled sound. He stepped back more than 10 steps, while Ding Meng stood in He Yu's position. He stroked his wrist and sneered. I don't like others to threaten me, including you. After that, he slowly turned around and walked out of the gate. Xing Yi and Xiao Mei quickly followed him. It was not until Ding Meng's figure completely disappeared that when Kai Ming and Wen Yu surrounded him. Where did this guy come from? He doesn't seem as strong as we thought. Wen Yu was obviously not convinced. This was because he felt that Ding Meng was only at the level of a combat master. As a combat elder, he should be able to put up a fight. What happened just now was just an accident. Little Yu, are you okay? When Kai Ming asked with concern. I'm fine, Uncle Wan. Do you wave his hand? His eyes were fixed on the direction Ding Meng left. He did not show his other hand because the wrist of his right hand, which was hidden behind his back, was already swollen. Just now, when Ding Meng flew over, he subconsciously used his hand to block it. If he did not react quickly enough, he would have been cut to the ground. However, blocking the attack caused his wrist bone to be slightly fractured. What was even more shocking was that he clearly realized that Ding Meng had not used his full strength. This hand knife was just a warning. If you want to take the conqueror, you are not strong enough. It seems that there are more and more people who can attract CEO Qing's interest in this conference, He Yu thought. Chapter 5:21. The upper echelons of the God War Alliance arrived much faster than expected. Before noon the next day, all the important figures of the 6 major sects had arrived. The meeting was held in the conference room on the 10th floor of the hotel. There was a huge oval conference table, and Qing Zhongfeng was sitting at the head of the table. He was a rather burly middle-aged man, but he was actually very well maintained. Qing Zhongfeng's real age was 203 years old. This leader of the Holy War Alliance had a very strong aura. He sat at the head of the table, looking down on everyone present. Surprisingly, Sheng Tianfeng was also present. He was sitting behind Qing Zhongfeng. As for the other members of the Holy War Alliance, they were all standing behind Qing Zhongfeng. However, since they were able to attend this meeting, they should be of high status. Then, Blue Light Group, Blood War Hall, Qian Huan Yu, Long Voyage Alliance, and Water Cherry Society stood on both sides of the table. Behind each of the bosses were elites. Ding Meng was standing behind the boss of Long Voyage Alliance, Dong Li. Next to him were Dong, Yi, and Kataga. The person sitting at the head of the table was naturally the valiant Chu Shaoqing. Standing behind her were Xing, Yi, and Xiao Mei. There were a total of 53 people in the conference room. This should be the most powerful group of people in the God War Alliance. Qing Zhongfeng first expressed his welcome to Chu Shaoqing. Miss Chu, thank you for saving our lives. On behalf of the God War Alliance, I would like to extend my highest respect to you. Chu Shaoqing nodded slightly. Leader Qing, you're too polite. Qing Zhongfeng glanced around and then said in a deep voice, Everyone, the reason why we're all gathered here today is to discuss the follow-up of Sovereign's mission. Regarding the details of Sovereign's mission, President Xi of Water Cherry Society has already made a report. I believe everyone has already seen it. Lin Aoshue stood up and said, Everyone, on behalf of the Shuane Association, I would like to express my deepest apologies to all of you. This mission failed due to insufficient preparation. Regrettably, the Sovereign also fell during the operation. The Shuane Association is willing to take full responsibility for this. The entire conference room was silent. The other big shots didn't say anything, nor did they express their opinions. They all looked like they were in deep thought. Qing Zhongfeng said, President Lin has already communicated with me. As for the losses, we will produce a report to give everyone an explanation. The problem now is that Starlink's energy is very tight. As the higher-ups of the Alliance, we have to consider the future of the Alliance. Today, I gathered everyone here to discuss. Apart from the Rainbow faction, is there any other good suggestion? He was still relatively rational. Regardless of whether the Supreme Vessel mission succeeded or failed, it was already in the past. It was unwise to dwell on the losses and blame she won and the others. The most important thing now was to find a new way. The greenwood element is actually worth trying again. The first to speak was by Jean Lai. The CEO of the Blue Light Group was elegant and had a good appearance. He looked to be in his 70s or 80s. However, according to the information, Bai Jean Lai was 189 years old this year. Putting aside his personal strength, this person was very business-minded and had a very good foresight. However, the reason he made such a suggestion was that he had always coveted the superconducting or on Azure Tree Planet. Previously, Jian of the Blue Light Corporation had suffered a huge setback on Azure Tree Planet, causing several fleets to be destroyed. This made him particularly angry. In fact, he also knew that Kataga, Ding Ming, and the others had a part to play in this. However, this was now at the conference table, so these things couldn't be discussed openly. There's no need to try again for the greenwood element. The one who objected was Fong Ming of Qianhuanyu. He was a young man wearing a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Not only did he look gentle, but he also looked like a knowledgeable scholar. Bai Jinlai frowned and said, CEO Fong, I don't quite understand your thoughts. Fong Ming turned to Dong Yu and said, CEO Dong, why don't you give your opinion? Dong Yu gestured behind him, and Kataga immediately stepped forward and explained, Presidents, the Greenwood planet is indeed rich in mineral resources, but at the same time, it's also home to what the local races call the gods. The combined fleet suffered heavy losses last time. From the perspective of interstellar navigation, I don't recommend going to the Greenwood planet again. We've already lost Supreme, and we can't afford to lose any more ships. Everyone nodded in agreement. Who could guarantee that they wouldn't suffer any losses if they sent their fleet to the Greenwood planet again? The current situation was that Starlink needed energy, and they couldn't sacrifice their fleet in exchange for energy. Moreover, although the Greenwood planet was backward, the various strange and terrifying things on Greenwood planet left a deep impression on everyone. For such a weak race to be able to open a space-time rift, just this point alone was enough to deter everyone. Blood War Temple's Li Qingfeng also raised his hand and said, That's right. I agree with Long Voyage Alliance's point of view. We've already lost Supreme, and we can't afford to suffer any more losses. This meant that 3 parties stood out to oppose the idea, so Bai Jinlai's suggestion was naturally rejected. Qing Zhongfeng looked at Lin Aoshue and said, President Lin, you've always been developing new energy sources. Do you have any good suggestions? Lin Aoshue shook her head helplessly and didn't say anything. Even if she had any suggestions, she couldn't bring them up. The loss of Supreme had already caused her to lose a large portion of her right to speak. Qing Zhongfeng looked around and said, Actually, I have an idea. We can gather our forces and search the uncharted areas in the southern part of the star field. Let's see if we can find anything. Compared to Bai Jinlai's suggestion, this was a method with almost no risk. Of course, without risk, there would be no benefit. Therefore, Fong Ming immediately raised his hand and objected. Beyond the southern part of the star field is the remote Madison. There's really nothing to search in that area, and there are a lot of space pirates and mercenaries. Although we're not afraid, it's still troublesome. His suggestion obviously received the approval of most of the bosses. Dong Li, Li Qingfeng, and Lin Aoshue all nodded. Qing Zhongfeng wasn't discouraged. President Fong, your Qianhuanyu has always been good at research. Do you have any good suggestions? Fong Ming pushed up his glasses and said, My suggestion is that, given the current situation, we should try going to Planet Extreme Flame. As soon as he said this, everyone present was shocked. Ding Ming also secretly perked up. This was the second person to suggest going to Planet Extreme Flame, and he was the boss of Qianhuanyu. This was worth paying attention to. Qing Zhongfeng stared at Fong Ming and said, President Fong, you should know the risks of going to Planet Extreme Flame. Fong Ming said in a deep voice, It was indeed risky in the past, but it's much less risky now. Qianhuanyu's research team can now freely convert heat energy into superpolymerization. As long as our personnel and equipment can reach Planet Extreme Flame, Qianhuanyu will be able to create high-grade fire crystals and convert them into energy. You really have such technology? Bai Jinlai sneered and asked. Fong Ming sneered as well. Did President Bai think that I was lying during the meeting? Perhaps other people would dare to lie during a meeting of this level, but the boss of a sect wouldn't make such a joke. Qing Zhongfeng pondered and said, if you can send your team to Planet Extreme Flame, how confident are you? Fong Ming said proudly, more than 90%. Of course, Qian Huanyu still needs the protection of all the presidents. Sheng Tianfeng, who had been silent all this while, suddenly opened his mouth. He let out a long sigh and said, Sigh, aren't we old guys too greedy sometimes? Qing Zhongfeng was very respectful to Sheng Tianfeng. Why do you say that, old captain? Sheng Tianfeng sighed and said, sometimes it's good that we want to train the young people. However, when it comes to important matters like this that affect the future of Starlink, it's better for us to be safe. For example, I shouldn't have let Tianming go on this mission. Everyone was sad. Sheng Tianming was Sheng Tianfeng's great-grandson after all. It was a pity that he died in this mission. It would be a lie to say that the old man wasn't sad. Lin Aoshue stood up again and said apologetically, Old Sheng, it's true that I didn't arrange this mission properly. Sheng Tianfeng shook his head and said, I can't blame you. Ding Meng suddenly sighed and said, I finally understand. Little rascal couldn't help but ask, what do you understand? Ding Meng said, Fong Ming and Qing Zhongfeng are in cahoots. Qing Zhongfeng first threw out a boring suggestion, and then Fong Ming took over. Little rascal said hesitantly, you're saying that the Holy War and Qian Huanyu have reached an agreement in private and have been planning to go to Planet Extreme Flame since a long time ago? Ding Meng said, now that Sheng Tianfeng has spoken, a person as famous as him will definitely say something. It's basically useless for others to object. Little rascal said, I understand now. So, you privately asked Star Art last night to borrow a starship from Chu Shaoqing? Does this count as a prior communication? Ding Meng said, I'm afraid it's not as simple as a prior communication. Little rascal asked why. Ding Meng said, I have a feeling that they want to go to Planet Extreme Flame for more than just to try their luck. Little rascal immediately understood. These big shots must have their own plans. At least one or two of them, such as Qing Zhongfeng and Fong Ming, must have other motives. Xiao AI said, could it be related to Planet Extreme Flame's secret? Ding Meng shook his head and said, I can't tell if it's true or not, but with the current situation, it's very difficult for Miss Chu to refuse. Sure enough, Sheng Tianfeng slowly stood up and walked to the conference table. Miss Chu, it's an honor to meet you. A young and promising talent like you is very rare nowadays. Chu Shaoqing now knew the identity of Sheng Tianfeng and the others. Since such a prestigious person personally spoke, she could only stand up and politely reply, Old Mr. Sheng, I'm very sorry. Our Conqueror starship was unable to save your family this time. I'm very sorry. Sheng Tianfeng waved his hand. Miss Chu, life and death are predestined. You can't blame others for this. This is all for the Alliance. I came to this conference because I hope that a similar tragedy won't happen again. Chu Shaoqing wasn't a fool. Now that she understood the situation of the conference, she could only bite the bullet and say, if old Mr. Sheng has any instructions, please feel free to speak. Chapter 522. Sheng Tianfeng wasn't in a hurry to speak. He first paced back and forth in the conference room, as if he was contemplating something. After a long time, he swept his gaze across the room and slowly said, over the years, quite a few pirates and adventurers have gone to Planet Extreme Flame. In fact, there were still people going there last year. Everyone listened quietly, knowing that he had to have something else to say. Sheng Tianfeng suddenly turned his head and gestured to Yu behind him. Yu understood and immediately pulled out a transparent, glass-like container from his backpack. It was probably a miniature version of the crystal carrier matrix. A rainbow-colored crystal lay inside, emitting a dazzling light. The light was so intense that it was especially piercing to the naked eye. Yu carefully placed the container in the center of the conference table, then said respectfully, Presidents, please appraise it. As soon as he finished speaking, Bai Jinlai cried out in surprise, "Rainbow-colored eternal flame crystal." Rainbow-colored eternal flame crystal was an extremely precious energy crystal. It was made up of pure thermal energy and thermal energy. The school of thermodynamics was the most popular among all the schools. It was because the school of thermodynamics was in the hands of the cultivators. The intensity of the origin energy flames they cultivated could be determined by the color. The flames were red in the beginning, but as the origin energy purity increased, the flames would slowly turn orange, yellow, green, cyan, blue, and purple. Not to mention the last few colors. Even with Ding Meng's current strength, the flames produced by his origin energy were only light yellow. Other origin energy cultivators mainly used red flames. It was simply unheard of for someone to cultivate yellow flames. Based on this principle, the quality of the fire crystals produced by origin energy flames was also determined by their color. The situation on Planet Extreme Flame was like this. The planet was filled with origin energy flames, so even with the current technology and equipment of the God War Alliance, they could only extract water-red fire crystals. Now that a rainbow-colored eternal flame crystal was placed in front of them, it was easy to imagine the commotion it caused. If this crystal was used for starships or cultivation, it wouldn't be inferior to inverse source crystals, silver core stones, or superconducting ores. Impossible. The first person to jump out was definitely Fong Ming. Qian Huanyu wasn't good at anything else, but appraising this was a piece of cake. Bai Jinlai sneered disdainfully, "President Fong, don't tell me you don't even have this little bit of insight." In fact, there was no need to appraise it. Just by sensing it a little, he knew the energy of this crystal. Its fluctuations were really shocking. Xiao AI said, "Such a crystal is enough for a starship like Sovereign to fly at full power for half a month." Fong Ming stared at the shirt with an intoxicated expression on his face. His expression was enough to explain a lot of things. Lin Aoshue finally spoke. "Elder Sheng, may I ask how you got this crystal?" Sheng Tianfeng sighed. "If you think I found it, then you're wrong. Last year, we found it in the wreckage of a starship. According to the pattern of the wreckage, it belonged to an exploration team in the God War starfield, and it came from the extreme flame star." At this moment, the entire venue became completely silent. Everyone was obviously shocked by this news. Fire crystals were very difficult to form, and naturally, there were very few of them. At least in the God War starfield, only Qian Huanyu had this technology. However, it might not be the case on the extreme flame star. It could have been created by the flame race, or it could have been formed naturally on the extreme flame star. Regardless, now that this legendary thing had really appeared, everyone began to take the existence of the extreme flame star seriously. This was energy, and it was a precious energy source. For the Alliance, it didn't matter if they stole or robbed it. They had to get their hands on it. Sheng Tianfeng slowly said, "President Lin, if Qian Huanyu can mass-produce high-grade fire crystals, can Starlink's energy problem be solved?" He didn't ask Fong Ming, but asked Lin Aoshue instead. This was undoubtedly giving Fong Ming face. Lin Aoshue nodded affirmatively. If mass production is feasible, then Starlink's energy reserves can extend Starlink's operation time by half. As soon as he said this, everyone was shocked. What he meant was obvious. If Fong Ming's technical team could successfully reach Planet Extreme Flame, then the Divine War Star Ring would be able to maintain its operations for another 100 years or more. This would undoubtedly allow the Star Ring to catch its breath. And this was just a high-grade fire crystal. If other 7-colored eternal flame crystals were discovered, how much wealth would that be? Chu Shaoqing suddenly smiled. "Old Mr. Sheng, you want the Conqueror to scout the way for your Alliance's combined fleet, right?" Sheng Tianfeng smiled, but his smile was somewhat awkward. "I also know that this request is very presumptuous. If Supreme was still around, we would have prioritized Supreme, but the technological level of the Conqueror is obviously higher than Supreme. So," he paused for a moment and said, "if young Miss Chu is willing to lend a helping hand, then I can personally guarantee that young Miss Chu can ask for anything you need. As long as it's something of my towering heaven peak, I'll definitely give it to young Miss Chu for free. Take this 7-colored eternal flame crystal as a gift for our first meeting. He respectfully placed the shirt in front of Chu Xiaoqing. After Sheng Tianfeng finished speaking, Qing Zhongfeng quickly expressed his stance. The Crusade Army can also guarantee that if the fleet can successfully reach Extreme Flame Star, we will prioritize fire crystals for your energy supply. At the same time, Miss Chu, you can also choose to become a permanent resident of our alliance, and a special one at that. Miss Chu can also become a high-level member of our alliance in the name of the Norse Empire's patrol fleet. Even if it was an empty promise, Qing Zhongfeng's promise was quite tempting. It was almost equivalent to saying, for the future of the alliance, as long as Chu Xiaoqing helps us this time, you can choose whatever you want in the alliance. I agree. Bai Jinlai raised his hand. I agree too. Feng Ming was not a fool. He already saw the huge benefits in this. We have no problem with it either. Li Qingfeng, Dong Yu, Lin Aoxue, and the others also expressed their stance. Xing's voice rang in Chu Xiaoqing's ears. Agree. This is actually beneficial for us. We can also go and see what's going on with this extreme flame star they mentioned. If it works, we will leave after loading the energy. If it doesn't work, we will come back here and think of another way. Only then did Chu Xiaoqing unhurriedly order Xiao Mei, pack up Mr. Sheng's gift and bring it back to the Conqueror. Her order undoubtedly meant that she agreed to the request of the alliance's higher-ups. Sheng Tianfeng immediately saluted her. I am very impressed by Miss Chu's righteousness. If Miss Chu has the time, how about coming to Starlink for a chat tomorrow night? Lin Aoxue also stood up decisively. Miss Chu, please come visit our Shuane Society's camp. Let us do our best as hosts. Chu Xiaoqing smiled and said, then it is better to decline courteously than decline courteously. The meeting was basically concluded. Everyone was chatting happily, but Little Rascal was unhappy. Everyone is so polite to her. Actually, it's all thanks to Ding Ming. In the end, Ding Ming had nothing to do with it. Xiao AI was speechless. Without the Conqueror, will we have made it back alive? Little Rascal argued. If Ding Ming hadn't killed Gu Yu in time, it would have been the same whether we had the Conqueror or not. Everyone would have died. Xiao AI said, based on your logic, if it wasn't for Xinguang Technologies, would Gu Yu have chased after the Conqueror? Little Rascal sneered. So what you're saying is, if it wasn't for me, then all this wouldn't have happened. Xiao AI said, it's good that you understand. Little Rascal was speechless. Ding Ming felt a headache whenever the two of them started arguing. However, what made Ding Ming's head hurt even more was that this matter had inexplicably developed to this point. Even though Magnificent Sky Peak had explained the reason in great detail, Ding Ming still felt that something was amiss. When Kai Ming from the House of the South had wanted to go to Planet Extreme Flame, and he who had helped to recommend him, there was nothing wrong with this in itself. However, at today's meeting, the Crusade Army had also raised the same topic, and there were actually not many families who objected to it. This was too illogical. It wasn't that they objected for the sake of objecting, or that they had to object. It was just that the situation on Planet Extreme Flame was so dangerous, yet they still insisted on going. Qing Zhongfeng, Magnificent Sky Peak, and Bai Jinlai were all old men who had lived for over 100 years. Logically speaking, it was impossible for them not to fight a battle they had no confidence in. It was still unjustifiable for them to rashly go. After all, this was fundamentally different from the mission on the Conqueror. At this moment, 2 parapsychic waves were transmitted over. Lu Qing and Jun Ling had established a telepathic link with him. What surprised Ding Ming was that Jun Ling could actually transmit parapsychic waves now. How long had it been? Jun Ling had improved so quickly? Ding Ming, I plan to let Elephant, Little Leopard, and the others make a trip back to Madison, Jun Ling said. Ding Ming curiously asked why. Jun Ling said, Lu Qing just told me that the pollution on Madison has almost subsided. I plan to let Elephant and the others go back. The Water Cherry Association will sponsor a small fleet to help with the reconstruction. So that's how it is. Ding Ming thought that this was pretty good. What about you? Junling said, I still plan to continue traveling with you. I also want to take a look at that planet extreme flame. Dingming then turned his gaze to Lu Qing. Lu Qing was looking at him with a sly smile. It was obvious that she was aware of the true relationship between Dingming and Junling. Therefore, helping to rebuild Madison was nothing more than to curry favor with Dingming. Are you going to go to Star Ring today or tomorrow? Lu Qing's parapsychic wave transmitted over. Dingming thought for a moment and said, tomorrow. Lu Qing said, then are you going to the Conqueror later, or are you going to stay in the hotel? Dingming frowned and said, why are you asking so clearly? Lu Qing did not mince her words. She was very direct. Which room are you staying in? I'll come and find you at night. This. Dingming immediately cowered. I'll go to the Conqueror. Chapter 5:23. Although planet Extreme Flame was 50 light-years away from the God War starfield, it was actually quite difficult to travel. The reason was that there was a rather complicated meteorite belt around the periphery of planet Extreme Flame, which was completely irregular. This extremely rare celestial phenomenon made it very difficult for large fleets to pass through. Under normal circumstances, only small and medium-sized spaceships could pass through. The fleet sent by the God Wars Alliance this time was extremely large. There were more than 300 spaceships of various sizes, a total of 7 fleets. Almost every sect had one fleet, and there was also a mothership in the center. Almost all the elites of the God Wars Alliance were sent out this time, except for the commander of the Crusade Army, Qing Zhongfeng, who stayed in Celestial Circle. The leaders of the other 5 sects all participated in this expedition. The entire fleet was led by the mothership, and at the front of the fleet was Chu Xiaoqing's Conqueror starship. According to Xing's plan, they did not use laser cannons to open up a path in the complicated meteorite belt. Instead, they used space bombs to distort the surrounding environment and directly open up a tunnel-like route for the fleet to enter to avoid causing too much noise. After passing through the meteorite belt, they could see the appearance of planet Extreme Flame. It was a completely gaseous planet. If one could describe it, it was like looking at the moon in the water. It was very blurry and hazy, like a dim star, although everyone knew that planet Extreme Flame was not the real planet Extreme Flame. There were 5 satellites around planet Extreme Flame. The temperature of the satellites was relatively low, so the main force of the fleet was stationed on satellite number 1. In fact, this combined fleet was mainly composed of carrier spaceships. After all, everyone came to planet Extreme Flame to search for energy. The real one to descend to the ground was the Conqueror starship. The temperature of planet Extreme Flame was too high. The surface alone had a temperature of 1,100 degrees. Ordinary spaceships would definitely not be able to descend. The 128 yuan alloy spaceships could not stay on the planet for too long either. However, for safety reasons, 3 large integrated spaceships followed the Conqueror starship down. They were mainly there to ensure that the Conqueror had sufficient energy. After entering the atmosphere, the true appearance of planet Extreme Flame was revealed. It was a fiery red planet like the sun. Everything on the planet was burning, but the ground was not barren. There were rivers, mountains, and vegetation. There was no water in the river. It was filled with fiery red lava. The mountains were not real mountains either. They looked more like red-hot rocks piled together. As for the vegetation, it was definitely not green. It was all red. It was no different from the vegetation in the human world. Everything on planet Extreme Flame was fiery red. This was a world of fire. The data on the radar showed that there was still a trace of oxygen in the atmosphere. As long as there was oxygen, then Origin ability users would be able to move about on the ground. Looking at the image on the screen, Dingming couldn't help but sigh. This place is both heaven and hell. Xiao AI agreed. That's right. This is practically a thermodynamic paradise. My database shows that the density of origin energy on the surface of planet Extreme Flame is 11, 7 times higher than on a normal planet. Origin ability users who cultivate here will definitely get twice the results with half the effort. Little Rascal pondered for a moment before saying, "That's not necessarily the case. If my guess is correct, this isn't some high-temperature environment. This is an electromagnetic world. The so-called Ember tribe is very likely an electromagnetic life form. We've arrived at a completely new world." Ding Ming asked curiously, "An electromagnetic world?" Little Rascal nodded. "Yes. Extremely high temperatures can easily produce electric and magnetic fields. You can understand electromagnetic fields as a force field. It's similar to the human world. In this force field, as time passes and energy transforms, it can give birth to electromagnetic life forms. The fact that the Ember tribe can survive is undoubtedly a type of electromagnetic life form. These life forms are very powerful, but their individual lifespans are very short. However, we can't rule out the existence of some special life forms. Electromagnetic worlds with life forms are very rare in the universe. I didn't expect there to be one here," Ding Meng said. "It should be said that the situation of this main star system is very unique. It has many different life forms. There are pure humans, the evergreen tree race, the true martial cultivators, the God War star system, and even the singularity of the Mouse star civilization. Little Rascal, do you think this planet has the ruins of your civilization?" Little Rascal said, "I'm afraid there is. If there is, it's very likely that it will attract the enemy's attention." Ding Ming fell silent. He had always been very curious. What kind of existence was the enemy that even Little Rascal was afraid of? At this time, the starship was slowly descending. The Conqueror and the other 3 integrated spaceships had already activated their energy shields. There was no other reason for this. They wanted to reduce the heat from the surface of the starship as much as possible and prevent any Ember tribe life forms from appearing. Of course, operating like this would consume a lot of energy, so the fleet's plan was to have the Conqueror stay on the surface while the other 3 integrated spaceships would constantly switch shifts with the starship on the satellite. The Conqueror chose a fiery red grassland as its docking point. After setting up camp, Qian Huanyu's team began to set up a simple base on the surface. They collected some of the burning flames on the ground and extracted them before they began to refine fire crystals. The production of fire crystals was also quite troublesome. The base needed about 3 days to produce about a ton of mid-grade fire crystals. This amount of fire crystals would be enough for normal use, but right now, it was only barely enough to maintain the energy shields of the 4 integrated spaceships, so the production of fire crystals was definitely not high. In the command center, the budget numbers displayed on the screen were particularly dazzling. Looking at these numbers by Jean Lai was a little anxious. "We're already here, but we still haven't managed to produce any fire crystals of higher quality." This was obviously a question for Fong Ming. Fong Ming's expression was a little awkward. "This is just a simple collection on the surface. If we can go deeper underground, I guarantee that we can produce high-grade fire crystals. If the conditions permit, we can even produce 2-color or 3-color fire crystals." According to the known information, the Alliance knew that Planet Extreme Flame had a total of 73 levels underground. This was not even the deepest level. If they went deeper underground, the risk would be quite high. I suggest that we split up and start the operation. Once we find anything, we'll report it immediately. What do you think, Presidents? Sheng Tianfeng suggested. Moving on the surface of Planet Extreme Flame basically depended on manpower. Moreover, those who went down would not be ordinary origin ability users. At the very least, those who were below the war venerable level would definitely not be able to go. Those who would definitely be first-rate elites. However, Planet Extreme Flame had one advantage. This was a world of electromagnetic waves, so communication was absolutely smooth. Even if they went thousands of meters underground, their wristbands and communicators would still be able to contact the command center. Sheng Tianfeng's suggestion was undoubtedly for the 6 sects to each send out a small group to scout the way. The Long Voyage Alliance was a little embarrassed because apart from Ding Ming, Junling, and Kataga, they did not even have a decent expert. On the other hand, the other 5 sects basically had large groups of people, each of them well equipped from the teeth to the toes. However, Lu Qing did not hesitate to run to Ding Meng's side. Lin Aoxue and the others turned a blind eye to this. Now, the group of beauties from Water Cherry Society knew that Lu Qing was determined to follow Ding Meng. Of course, there were also benefits for Lu Qing to join. She could establish a spiritual link with Ding Meng and Junling, so it would be easier for them to take care of each other. As the large group of people disembarked from the ship, Xian Jie finally waved at Ding Meng. "What's the situation?" Ding Meng knew that Xian Jie definitely had some secret goods. Coming to planet Extreme Flame, with the powerful reconnaissance system of the Conqueror, it was impossible that nothing could be found. A small screen rose up from the main control console. The screen was a 2D map. There were only two bright spots on the map, one red and one green, flashing. Ding Meng naturally understood this kind of simple map. "The green is us." Xian Jie nodded solemnly. "When the fleet landed, I discovered this strange red dot. This is an exceptionally strange energy. This energy wave is at least 80% similar to the energy wave detected in the Rainbow System. I think you need to go over and check it out." Ding Meng's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that Planet Extreme Flame also contained the operating energy of Divine Light Technology Singularity? "How far away is it from us?" Ding Meng asked. Xian Jie's expression was serious. "You have to be mentally prepared this time. The straight-line distance from us in the air is 5,665 kilometers, but my personal judgment is that the actual distance is even further. It might be more than 10,000 kilometers." He paused for a moment, then turned to Kataga. "Officer Kataga and President Liu, it's best that you stay on the Conqueror. I need you to help me analyze the data together with Makoto Fuma on Shuiyu Mountain." Kataga nodded. He understood what Xian Jie meant. This trip was likely to be dangerous. Ding Meng's strength was unquestionable, and Lu Qing and Junling were also stronger than him. If he really went along, he would only be a burden. As for Lu Qing, she was a light-speed origin ability user. Once she got off the ship, she would need to use her origin ability to withstand the high temperature. It was not that she could not withstand it, but that her origin ability was being used up. If they encountered an accident, she would probably be a burden as well. Even if Lu Qing was unwilling, she still had to follow orders. Along the way, Sheng Tianfeng had said that the mothership would be overseen by Li Qingfeng. Although Chu Shaoqing was the commander of the Conqueror, the one giving the orders was actually Xian Jie. Since Xian Jie had left his secret goods with Ding Meng, he would naturally consider Ding Meng's safety. "Go!" Xian Jie patted Ding Meng's shoulder forcefully and handed him a pair of low-light glasses. "Put this on. I'll be able to see your situation at all times. At the same time, I'll analyze the data for you. If you encounter any danger, I'll immediately send you back." These glasses were actually a bit superfluous for Ding Meng. He currently had many types of reconnaissance vision, but Xian Jie was doing this out of the kindness of a friend. Ding Meng did not say much and quickly put on the glasses. Xian Jie looked at him meaningfully. "Just like last time, I'll still say the same thing. We'll wait for you to come back and eat steak together." "Don't worry, I'll definitely come back." After saying this, Ding Meng and Junling walked side by side to the connecting cabin. Chapter 524. As soon as they reached the ground, Ding Meng and Ding Meng finally realized just how powerful Planet Extreme Flame was. They were greeted by a wave of stiflingly hot wind. This wind was in no way inferior to the origin energy released by a beginner war sovereign, and it was the kind that could be continuously released. Anyone without any strength would find it difficult to even stand in this environment for 10 minutes. Even with Ding Meng's profound strength, he still had to circulate his first 3 origin points to defend himself. Of course, Ding Meng also had an advantage that no one else could compare to. He could circulate origin energy to support himself while using the diamond star-fusing art to absorb and refine the origin energy in the air. This formed a virtuous cycle with very little wear and tear. In comparison, the prototype model's advantages were fully displayed in this harsh environment. Ding Meng, who was equipped with the prototype model, was not only completely undamaged, she could even fly at high speeds. She was one step ahead of Ding Ming as she headed for the target location. Planet Extreme Flame didn't seem to be any different from a normal human world. The only difference was that everything was burning. There were still many strange creatures on the surface, but they all seemed to be low-level reptiles. A typical example was the four-horned beast, which was similar to a lizard. It didn't possess any offensive abilities, and it simply devoured the origin energy flames around it. Some even dove into the rivers to devour the lava. As they ventured deeper into the mountains, they could see some strange birds that resembled bats and eagles moving about. These creatures were quite aggressive, and they were similar to the bats and eagles of the human world. They would swoop down and either scratch with their sharp claws or bite with their sharp beaks, trying to catch Ding Ming and eat him. Of course, these fiery red creatures were powerful because of their high temperature, not to mention the fact that they could scratch you. Just approaching them would cause you to feel a shocking heat. Any ordinary origin energy user would have melted long ago. However, to Ding Ming, these creatures who didn't know the difference between life and death were nothing more than food. As long as they dared to fly over, Ding Ming wouldn't hesitate to raise his hand and melt them down. What came out was indeed a large mass of energy that was a mixture of heat and origin energy. This amount of energy was better than nothing for Ding Ming. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. After melting dozens of birds, there were no longer any strange birds in this barren mountain that dared to cause trouble for him. It really is an electromagnetic world. Little Rascal sighed. Shout AI said, "I told you, this is a great place to train. It's even more efficient than the induction cabin." Little Rascal nodded. If we really have time, this is indeed a good place. As they walked and discussed, Jun Ling's voice finally rang out in the communication device. Ding Ming, coordinates 1256, due north 7 for degrees west. Come up quickly. There's something strange here. Hearing this, Ding Ming rushed forward at top speed. The location Jun Ling had mentioned was in a valley at the peak of a bare mountain. This place was a fiery red lake. The lake wasn't small, covering an area of about 30,000 square meters. At this moment, all kinds of birds were continuously flying into the lake. On the ground, some of the four-horned beasts were also fighting to jump into the lake. This place gave him the feeling that he had returned to the devouring world's poison pool. Jun Ling descended from the sky. This is the only place I've flown to that is unique. I haven't seen this kind of terrain anywhere else. Ding Ming immediately asked through the communication channel, "Elder Shui, what do you think?" After a long time, Shui Mountain replied, "Ding Ming, this lake is indeed a bit similar to the devouring world's poison pool. However, according to my observations, there are some differences." Ding Ming frowned and said, "What's the difference?" Shui Mountain said, "Take a closer look. Many birds and beasts here are fighting to enter the lake. Some are able to enter completely, while others are melted." Ding Ming observed carefully and realized that Shui Mountain's analysis was correct. Some of the fire eagles were rolling around in the lake. As they rolled around, they began to struggle. As they struggled, they turned into bubbles. It was obvious that they were vaporized by the hot lake water. Jun Ling said, "According to the data, the lake's temperature is as high as 2,138 degrees. Shui Mountain said, "My rough guess is that this lake should lead underground. However, in order to go underground, one must first pass this test. All the creatures that passed the test and went down should have evolved. Those that couldn't go down would naturally be melted. This is the difference between this lake and the devouring world's poison pool." Ding Ming was enlightened. Combined with the unique environment of Planet Extreme Flame, Shui Mountain's analysis was infinitely close to the truth. "Let's go down too," Ding Ming decisively decided. This temperature was no problem for the prototype mech. The two of them moved smoothly underwater. They were basically following the direction of these monsters. The bottom of the lake was not a cave or a tunnel. After emerging from the other side, Ding Ming discovered that the environment was not much different from before. Above his head was a fiery red, and the surroundings were still burning. The entire world was a fiery red, but the temperature had changed. The current temperature was 2,200 degrees. Spreading out his psychic vision, he scanned the area. This underground area did not look like a cave, but it was actually a super cave. Because it was far too big, and because of the color temperature, it gave people the illusion that they were still on the surface. Little Rascal said, "This should be the first underground floor of Planet Extreme Flame." Xiao AI said, "According to the data in the database, this pool should be the quenching pool of Planet Extreme Flame. Every floor has a pool like this that leads underground. The lower you go, the higher the temperature." Ding Ming asked, "How far are we from the destination?" Xin Jie's voice rang out. "It's still early. By the looks of it, you still have to pass through at least 10 floors. The 10th floor wasn't difficult for Ding Ming at all. The various monsters in these caves weren't a threat to him and Junling at all. It was just a matter of time. However, as they went deeper, the temperature gradually began to rise. On average, each floor was about 1,000 degrees. By the time they reached the 8th floor, the temperature had broken through 10,000 degrees. Caves at this temperature actually did not exist. Instead, they existed in the form of gaseous and ionic substances. It was basically a misty expanse, and there were bright flames everywhere. By the time they reached the 9th floor, the temperature was already close to 12,000 degrees. Even Junling was beginning to feel strained. In the end, she was not a pure thermodynamic origin ability user. There was no need to force herself any further. "Junling, you should take a look around the 8th and 9th floors. See how the other teams are doing, and scout the terrain while you're at it." Ding Ming's arrangement made sense. This underground cave was not completely sealed off. It was an open structure. At the very least, Ding Ming's telekinesis vision was unable to see the end of it. Thus, Makoto Fujin's analysis was that this underground world should be completely unobstructed. Since you were able to come down here, you'll meet up with the other teams sooner or later. Qian Huanyu's team is currently 600 kilometers away. Why don't you let Junling contact them? The quenching pool of the 10th floor could no longer be called a pool. It was located in an extremely hidden cave within a cave. The cave was definitely in a gaseous state. Amidst the dense, fiery mist, there was a ball of faint white light. Xinjie's voice immediately rang out. From its position, it should be this ball of white light. The energy fluctuations are coming from it. Ding Ming could also sense that the energy fluctuations coming from this ball of white light were stronger than the origin energy flames in the surroundings, but not by much. It was like the aura of an expert origin ability user, gentle, steady, and barely discernible. The strange thing was that the starship's radar had actually detected it. This was extremely illogical. Little Rascal finally spoke up. "Something's not right. I've discovered that this ball of energy has the aura of our Mao Xing civilization." Ding Ming said in surprise, "Divine Light Technology's energy source? Why can't I sense it?" Little Rascal's tone was serious. "It's not Divine Light Technology. The Mao Xing civilization has many different types of energy sources. Divine Light Energy is just one of them." Xiao AI was curious. "Then what kind of energy source is it?" Little Rascal suddenly reminded her, "Be careful. Quickly retreat." The ball of white light in the fog seemed to have sensed that someone was nearby, and it spontaneously began to change. It began to slowly rotate like a spinning star, and then it gradually turned into a glowing image. The glowing image also slowly took shape until it finally transformed into a glowing mirror image of a person. When they saw this mirror image, Xinjie and the others might not have been too surprised, but Ding Ming and Little Rascal were extremely shocked. This was because this person was exactly the image of the general sitting on the throne in the Rainbow Shrine. His clothes and accessories were exactly the same, and he wielded an S-shaped blade in his hand. It looked like a blade, but it wasn't a blade, and it looked like a spear, but it wasn't a spear. Everything about it existed in the form of light. The only difference was that he didn't exude the terrifying pressure of the Mao Xing general, but his aura was still quite powerful. Xiao AI also spoke up. "Be careful. His origin energy index is as high as 50 million points. He's already at the level of an intermediate warrior. Ding Ming didn't dare to be careless. He activated his first 8 origins at full force. The mirror image didn't make any unnecessary movements. It raised its hand and slashed out diagonally. How should one describe this slash? It wasn't as simple as a slash at all. It was simply a pure white jade belt. Not only was its momentum strange, but its aura was also very strong. It was simply unprecedented. Clang, catoptric deflection immediately formed a large sword in front of him, and the blade was immediately deflected. The mirror image was momentarily stunned. It seemed that it hadn't expected this person to be able to block its attack. It didn't slash out a second time. Instead, it raised its hand and threw the blade. At such a close distance, Ding Ming had never imagined that this guy would dare to attack in such a manner. In fact, the main reason was that the mirror image was made of light. It wasn't easy to see its movements clearly, and it was also very fast. As soon as the blade was thrown, it transformed into a sharp spear. The tip of the spear was pointed directly at Ding Ming's forehead. It was too late to withdraw catoptric deflection. Ding Ming's eyes fiercely exerted force, and a large amount of telekinesis surged out, forming a telekinesis wall in front of his face. With a pu sound, the spear froze in midair. Ding Ming's expression was grim. He discovered that even though the telekinesis wall had blocked the attack, the spear's power hadn't disappeared. It was still thrusting forward, as if his opponent had some sort of telekinesis. When he raised his head again, the mirror image suddenly slapped out with its palms. Little Rascal cried out in alarm, "Be careful!" It was too late. The spear instantly became several times thicker, and a pillar of light slammed into him. Ding Ming steeled his heart and exerted force through his eyes, causing the telekinesis wall to materialize into the physical form of the green spirit tree. With an earth-shattering boom, a large wave of origin energy exploded. The spear and the tree both exploded at the same time. Chapter 5:25. On the real-time monitoring screen, Xi and Jia and the others saw a large area of filamentary signal interference. The image was very blurry, and it seemed to be spinning. Ding Ming seemed to have been knocked back. In fact, their guess was right. The explosion was extremely powerful. Ding Ming was knocked back more than 10 meters, and the mirror image was in the same situation. However, the light on the mirror image was much dimmer. What's going on? Little Rascal was puzzled. Didn't they say there were more than 70 floors in this underground world? Why is there such a powerful thing on the 10th floor? Xiao AI's tone became serious. Pay attention. His battle index is still rising. Ding Ming also noticed it. The mirror image's light only dimmed for a second or two before returning to normal. This time, the aura it emitted was even stronger. Xiao AI said he actually broke through 100 million in an instant. He's an elementary combat monarch. Ding Ming began to operate the 9th origin, and the fluctuations grew stronger. The mirror image's hands grabbed at the air. This time, 2 identical sabers miraculously condensed into form. The mirror image raised its hands and threw the 2 sabers in the same way. The sabers of light whistled and spun in the air, leaving behind afterimages of light. They were like 2 balls of light. This scene could not be seen by Xi and Jia and the others because everything was white. Ding Ming did not move. This was because 2 orange sabers suddenly appeared in the air. He had already unleashed the blazing sun battle pattern. Boom! Boom! Another 2 loud sounds rang out. The 4 sabers collided, causing the gaseous flames in the surroundings to burst out rapidly. A spherical vacuum was created in the area of impact. In the vacuum, Ding Ming leaped into the air like a fish leaping through the dragon's gate. His hand saber drew a beautiful arc in the air, aiming straight for the mirror image's temple. I don't care if you're human or light. If you have the guts, try taking it head-on. The mirror image's reaction was not slow either. It actually dared to take the attack head-on. It pushed its palms to the side, but unfortunately, it could not push it away. With a muffled bang, Ding Ming directly cut off both of his wrists. His hand chopped down on his temples like a war hammer, and the mirror image immediately fell down. Of course, it was impossible for Ding Ming to let him fall to the ground. The moment his karate chop hit, he used a spinning kick. This was the most standard spinning kick from Chu Xiaoqing's 9 forms of Sparrow Strike. The power of this kick was no small matter. The mirror image's chest seemed to have been swept out of shape, and its whole body was kicked away on the spot. Its back hit something in the thick fog, and then it fell to the ground, motionless. Everyone in the command center was dumbfounded. Although they could not sense the scene, the data reflected by their low-light glasses would not lie. Ding Ming's current origin ability index was 200 million points, which was close to that of an intermediate battle monarch. Using the God Wars Starfield's ranking system, Ding Ming was now a second-stage martial sage. A martial sage was a supreme existence in the God Wars Starfield. A few big shots had cultivated for hundreds of years before breaking through to martial sage. Ding Ming, who was not even 30 years old, was already a martial sage. This was not as simple as simply defying the heavens. It was simply like an immortal. Kataga could not help but turn his head to look at Lu Qing, who had a dazed expression on her face. He finally understood why this beauty, who could captivate all living beings in the Alliance, was so obsessed with Ding Ming. If one did not know Ding Ming's true strength, Ding Ming was the kind of person who would not have anything to do with Lu Qing. No matter how one looked at it, these two people did not match. But now, even Kataga was a little envious of Lu Qing. If Lu Qing really became Ding Ming's woman, it would be simply amazing. While he was still imagining things, the scene changed again. The mirror image, which had clearly been beaten up by Ding Ming, actually stood up again. It casually waved its arms, and the broken wrists were actually as good as new. Then it twisted its body, and the deformed chest also returned to normal. Ding Ming was also a little dumbfounded. Damn, this can't be right. It could be restored like this? He saw the mirror image floating in the middle of the quenching pool. Its entire body was shining faintly, as if it was absorbing the energy in the quenching pool. Xiao Ai was also shocked. His battle ability index is still increasing rapidly. It has already broken through 300 million points. What kind of immortal mirror image was this? It was so strong that it was frightening. This time, the mirror image did not summon its saber. Instead, it suddenly squatted down and got down on one knee. It opened its arms wide and raised them in front of it. A fierce wave of energy surged out. This was the most standard and most primitive form of releasing source power. Actually, Ding Ming also liked to use this move. This attack was the simplest and most violent. If it could not block it, it would be destroyed instantly. If it could block it, it would not be able to withstand the impact for a long time. It was like a leaf being swept away by a flood. This forced Ding Ming to use the first 9 points to the limit. Similarly, he pushed his palms forward and released source power. The two waves of energy violently collided with each other. The real-time image was cut off with a whoosh. It was filled with bits and pieces of interference signals. At the same time, Fong Ming's voice rang out in the public comms channel. What's going on? There's a very strong wave coming from underground very close to us. Which team is fighting with whom? He was not the only one who could sense a battle between battle monarchs. Even Bai Jinlai was alarmed. It should be about 820 kilometers away from us. This aura is very strong. Sheng Tianfeng's voice rang out as well. Does the command center know what's going on? Xin Jet definitely did not know either. At this moment, Ding Ming and his mirror image were competing with each other for source power. This scene was a bit like two martial arts experts competing with their internal strength. Both of them were trapped in the current and could not move at all. Whoever could not withstand it first would be swept away or even smashed to pieces. In this kind of fierce battle, Ding Ming's low-light glasses, the communicator in his ear, and the wristwatch on his wrist had all been melted to ashes. It would be strange if he could still contact the command center. The mirror image's origin energy index continued to rise. It started at 300 million and rose by 10 million every 10 seconds on average. It did not seem like it would stop at all. Ding Ming only felt his raised arms gradually become heavier. This was the other party's current gradually increasing. He estimated that he could only hold on for 1 or 2 more minutes at most before he could no longer hold on. You could go to hell for me. Ding Ming did not care about anything else. He quickly activated his 10th origin, and the origin energy in his palm swallowed up the other party's current, drowning the mirror image in an instant. This time, Ding Ming did not dare to be careless. The orange origin energy surged forward for a full minute before stopping. He was confident that the mirror image would definitely be smashed to smithereens. Even a spaceship would be smashed to smithereens under this kind of attack, let alone a small mirror image like this. Sure enough, after a minute, everything returned to normal. The mirror image seemed to have disappeared without a trace. No, it's still there, little rascal said in a low voice. Ding Ming spread out his telekinesis vision and discovered that the mirror image above the quenching pool was indeed no longer there. However, that ball of white energy had appeared once again. The mirror image had simply been beaten back to its original form. The white light once again turned into a spiral of stars, which slowly expanded and turned back into light. It seemed that the mirror image of Mao Xing was being restored. This mother asterisk cur. Ding Ming couldn't help but curse. Wasn't this energy a little too abnormal? Little rascal decisively issued an order. Use your divine light weapon and destroy it in one go. If you can't, absorb it. Clang! The divine light gauntlet left Ding Ming's wrist and flew into the air, transforming into a shining white sword of light. Then, with a xiao, it wrapped itself around Ding Ming's arm, turning Ding Ming's entire arm into an arm of light. The destructive power of this weapon was extraordinarily ferocious. It didn't matter what kind of life form or energy form you were in, they would all be taken away. Xiao AI said in a low voice, "Pay attention. His combat index has broken through 800 million. He's now neck and neck with you." Ding Ming nodded. This time, he decided not to play around with this mirror image. He would take it out with a single attack. Just as Ding Ming was about to take the initiative to attack, the mirror image that had already taken form suddenly spoke in human language. "You actually have a divine light weapon. Are you a Mao Xing cultivator?" Ding Ming was stunned. What exactly are you?" The mirror image said, "I am the Ifrit Guardian." Ding Ming frowned. What was a guardian? There was no record of this in Xiao AI's database. At this moment, little rascal suddenly left Ding Ming's body and appeared in the cavern in the form of light. The guardian exclaimed in surprise. "You really are a Mao Xing cultivator?" Little rascal asked sternly. "Let me ask you, where did your pearl origin come from?" The guardian was also stunned. "What pearl? What origin?" Little rascal said. "It's the energy you use to restore yourself. This energy has already weakened a lot." The guardian was shocked. "How did you know?" Little rascal suddenly waved his hand, and a white light was drawn out from the guardian's body. The tiny bit of energy flew directly into little rascal's hand, then disappeared into his palm. The guardian's appearance immediately changed from a pure white Mao Xing general to a fiery red stone giant. The caretaker was shocked. "How did you do it?" Little rascal snorted disdainfully. "This is something that belongs to me in the first place. It's easy for me to take it back." The guardian suddenly knelt on one knee and respectfully said to little rascal, "My master ordered me to guard the entrance and wait for the Mao Xing cultivator. Once I see the real Mao Xing cultivator, I'ma let him pass." Little rascal said, "How long have you been guarding here?" The guardian said, "This year is the 58th year." Little rascal said, "Where is your master?" The guardian said, "He's still down there. If my lord wishes to go, please take a look at this." As soon as he finished speaking, many tiny flames suddenly appeared in front of him. They looked like red threads that formed a huge map of the underground maze. The map was displayed for only 5 seconds before the flames burned out and the map disappeared without a trace. However, with Ding Ming's memory, he instantly memorized the map and found many problems with it. Ding Ming frowned. "Why are there so many twists and turns?" The guardian replied, The flame tribe is also divided into tribes. Our tribe can only go down this way. If you recklessly enter another tribe's quenching pool, I'm afraid it will be disadvantageous to you. Little Rascal said, Is your master at the bottom? The guardian said, I'm not sure. However, my master said that if the Mao Xing cultivator came, he would naturally be able to find him. Little Rascal said, Your master is that confident? The guardian said, My master also said that with the Mao Xing cultivator's strength, it will be very easy to find him. In other words, Ding Ming's strength was not enough. If even the guardian was so strong, then their master was definitely an even stronger existence. However, since they were already here, they had to go deeper. Ding Ming nodded. Let's go down. Chapter 526. Starting from the 11th floor, the fiery red underground world turned orange. It was obvious that the origin energy flames in the surroundings had risen in temperature, reaching an astonishing 15,000 degrees Celsius. There were very few Ifrit monsters in the surroundings. Occasionally, an orange rock golem would pass by, but these rock golems were just like the Guardian. They only glanced at Ding Ming before avoiding him. That's not right. Why aren't these Ifrit monsters as strong as the Guardian? Ding Ming was confused. Little Rascal explained, On the Mao planet, there's a kind of high-grade origin energy called the Pearl Origin Energy. It has many miraculous uses, one of which is its ability to convert energy. It's similar to the origin energy cores installed on battle armor, which can convert energy by several times. Ding Ming pondered for a moment before saying, You're saying that even though the Guardian has a combat index of 800 million, it's actually formed from the Pearl Origin Energy? Little Rascal said, That's right. The Guardian's true strength should be around 50 million battle index. The so-called 800 million battle index should be formed from the Pearl Origin Energy. Ding Ming was silent for a moment before saying, But there's something off about this. Xiao AI said, What's off about it? Ding Ming said, Based on the surface's temperature and level, the creatures on the surface should be at the high-level warrior level. The evolved Ifrit monsters from the 1st to 9th floors should be at the battle sovereign level, and the Guardian at the entrance should be at the level of a battle sovereign. However, these rocks on the 11th floor are only at the high-level battle sovereign level. They're not even at the level of a battle master. Xiao AI muttered, Then let's continue down. Continuing down wasn't too difficult for Ding Ming. Even though he was surrounded by orange flames and the temperature was still rising, his origin energy was still flowing smoothly through the first 5 origin cores. This was all thanks to the Diamond Star technique's constant tempering of his body. In other words, Ding Ming's body was even harder than alloy. According to the route marked on the map, there was indeed a Guardian at the quenching pool on the 20th floor. This Guardian looked a little like a standing seal, and after sensing it for a bit, its strength was only at the advanced level War Elder level, not even comparable to the Guardian at the entrance of the 10th floor. This orange seal wasn't speaking the human language, but the unique ventriloquism of the Flame tribe. Its croaking was similar to the croaking of a frog. Xiao AI had a detailed record of the Flame tribe's language in the database, so Ding Ming had no problem understanding it. Hello, the 10th floor has been cleared. You're free to pass through. The seal's attitude was very polite. After so many years, you are the first human creature to be able to travel freely. Thank you. Ding Ming was about to step into the quenching pool when the seal called out to him again. Human, you have to be careful. It will be dangerous if you go any deeper. Ding Ming frowned. What danger? The seal said, It hasn't been very peaceful down there recently, so I don't recommend you go down. Our flame butterfly tribe has been fighting with the flame dragon tribe for eternal flame crystals, and we've all suffered heavy casualties. It's not safe for you to go down. Eternal flame crystals were actually high-grade flame crystals. They were much more expensive than the man-made flame crystals produced by Qian Huanyu, because they were naturally formed underground on planet Extreme Flame. According to the database, in addition to the quenching pool, there was also a strange rock known as the Cast Flame Rock. Its specific composition was unknown, but it was specialized in absorbing the origin energy flames underground. Just like the diamond star fusing art, it refined this energy and then turned it into eternal flame crystals. Eternal flame crystals were extremely valuable to both humans and the flame tribe. To put it bluntly, it was something that everyone fought over with their lives. From the 21st layer to the 30th layer, the orange color of the underground world slowly turned from orange to yellow. The temperature had already reached 43,000 degrees. To be honest, even Ding Meng was finding it a little difficult to endure. The origin energy consumption in his body was too great, and he needed to circulate 6 origin points to resist the high temperature. This was a little too risky, because if he encountered the so-called Flame Dragon tribe, he would be in trouble. Little Rascal said, "Ding Meng, this layer is rich in origin energy. You can sit down and cultivate." Xiao AI immediately said, "Yes, I can cultivate, but I've already calculated the origin energy here. It will take me 4 years to absorb the origin energy here. I'm afraid there won't be enough time." Actually, Ding Meng's cultivation had reached a bottleneck, and this bottleneck was extraordinarily large. First of all, he no longer needed to practice his martial arts. During the 3 years he had spent on the expedition, his projection had already practiced all kinds of martial arts to the point of perfection. Second was telekinesis. On the Supreme, he had practiced the blue spirit art with Junling and Lu Qing. The general telekinesis was built on the foundation of origin energy, so it was very difficult to improve telekinesis. In that case, what he really needed to cultivate was to strengthen and expand the 10th origin point. It must be known that the 10th origin point required a huge amount of resources. Just absorbing the origin energy in the air was minuscule. Even in the underground world of Planet Extreme Flame, where the density of origin energy had increased by dozens of times, it was only an indirect increase in efficiency. The amount of energy required was still astronomical. Little Rascal suddenly had an idea. Didn't the guard say that the Flame Butterfly tribe and the Flame Dragon tribe are fighting over eternal flame crystals? Let's go and fight for them too. Won't we be able to get the resources once we get them? Ding Meng's eyes lit up. That made sense. If he helped the Flame Butterfly tribe get the eternal flame crystals, they would get a share, right? With this thought, Ding Meng directly rushed to the 30th floor's quenching pool. The guard at the entrance to this floor was very small, only about the size of a coffee table. It looked like a golden dragonfly dancing in the air. It was a female guard. Didn't you say that they were fighting over eternal flame crystals with the Flame Dragon tribe? Is there any cast fire rock around here? Ding Meng asked bluntly. The dragonfly guard flapped its wings curiously. It's already very good that a human like you can come here. You're still thinking about eternal flame crystals? Ding Meng said, "Then do you have them or not?" The dragonfly guard immediately went on alert. "What are you trying to do? Don't think that you can do whatever you want down here just because the other guards gave you the order to remove them." Ding Meng said, "I'll help you guys get them. Can you give me some of them when I get them?" The dragonfly guard couldn't help but laugh. "You dare to steal from a Flame Dragon tribe expert?" Ding Meng was a little annoyed. "What expert? I need eternal flame crystals right now. Just tell me the approximate location, and I'll give you some if I get them. How about it? You won't lose anything." He was gambling again. He was betting that the Flame Tribe creatures would be greedy for these precious resources. The dragonfly guard was no exception. Its eyes widened, and its pupils kept changing color. It was clearly thinking about Ding Meng's words. "Okay, head west now. There's a crystal well 1,800 kilometers away. Most of our people have been killed or injured. If you find any survivors, tell them my name and tell them that I called for you," the dragonfly guard said. Ding Meng said, "What's your name?" The dragonfly guard thought for a moment and said, "In your human language, you can call me Kochi. What about you? Human, what's your name?" Ding Meng. After saying this, Ding Meng immediately headed west. Seeing his figure disappear into the yellow fog, Kochi's tone became thoughtful. "This human is interesting. He finally came down, but he's rushing to his death. 800 kilometers was a piece of cake for Ding Meng. However, it was still quite troublesome to get there. According to the map, after leaving the territory of the flame butterfly tribe, there was a more primitive rock and lava terrain. This was the border between the flame tribe tribes. There were large and small caves scattered all over, and it was difficult to tell the direction. Of course, this was not a problem. With his telekinesis vision, Ding Ming quickly arrived at the so-called Crystal Well. His first impression was that he seemed to have returned to Star Splendor University. During the exam, he had battled with Jianghai on the map called Purgatory Furnace. It was a huge cave. In the middle of the cave, there was a circular pit that was about 40 to 50 meters deep. Below it, there was a mass of chaos. Of course, it was not really chaos, but a mixture of 7 different colors. The temperature was as high as 100,000 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, apart from the starship's propulsion furnace, anything else would be vaporized immediately. Ding Ming was no exception. He would die if he came into contact with it. With this 30-meter-wide crystal well as the center, there were steep and uneven forts and densely packed caves all around. The deep pit was surrounded by a group of creatures that looked like crocodiles. These crocodiles were definitely from the flame dragon tribe because they were very different from the flame butterfly tribe. Their bodies were like rough and heavy stones, and their surface was covered in shiny black scales, which were very similar to the scales of the demon dragon that the water droplet had encountered. "It's the ancient demon tribe," the water droplet said. "They're very durable." Little Rascal said, "Are you sure?" The water droplet said, "I'm sure. They're the same as Origin ability users who have quenched their system." On a hillside to the north of the deep pit, a group of dragonflies were flying around. Many of the dragonflies were injured. Many of them had broken limbs and were being taken care of by their companions. These creatures were like kochi, bursting with yellow flames all over their bodies. Obviously, they were from the flame butterfly tribe. Ding Ming secretly used his telekinesis vision to scan the entire area. Then, he quickly ran to the hillside to the north. The group of dragonflies immediately became nervous. Many of them flew into the air and spread their wings, ready to fight. The flame dragon tribe was also a bit restless. A human had actually come to this place. This was something that had never happened before. "Don't panic, everyone. I was called by Kochi to help," Ding Ming hurriedly explained. The group of dragonflies didn't have much of a reaction to this. Those that flew up immediately landed. Everyone was talking at once. "Where's Lord Kochi? Is Lord Kochi coming? What can a human like you help with? Go away. Ridiculous. You're so short among humans. Don't make trouble. Where did this shorty come from?" Well, Ding Ming was a little speechless. When he was about to explain, the crocodiles of the flame dragon tribe below suddenly cheered. "Here it comes. The crystal tide is coming. Everyone get ready." Chapter 5:27. While the crocodiles were cheering, many of the dragonflies from the flame butterfly clan also flew into the sky. Everyone's attention was attracted by the crystal well. The lava in the crystal well suddenly surged. This surge wasn't simple, and even the entire cave was shaking. Those who didn't know would think that this was a sign of a landslide. The liquid was like a magma eruption, constantly spewing out 7-colored flames. Not long after, the crystal well was like a pot of boiling water, violently erupting into a curtain of flames. This kind of majestic eruption was extremely shocking because the temperature was 100,000 degrees. Even if one stayed in the cave, it would be of great help to the cultivation of thermodynamic ability users. With a boom, a stream of flames shot into the sky, scattering a few particularly dazzling objects. The dragonflies from the flame butterfly clan were quick to react. They flew up like fighter jets and grabbed the objects in their arms. Then, they spun a few times in the air, using a variety of difficult moves to avoid the stream of flames before quickly returning to the small hill. Ding Ming could see very clearly that those shiny objects were bright, red, eternal flame crystals. The energy fluctuations were very strong, and they weren't inferior to ordinary silver core stones. Moreover, 2 of the dragonflies caught eternal flame crystals that were red and yellow. Judging from the colors, they were definitely high-grade goods. Was this the so-called crystal tide? Ding Ming secretly pondered. These eternal flame crystals weren't that easy to obtain. The risk factor was too high. Only the flame butterfly clan's dragonflies could catch them in an instant with their advantage of flying. If they were careless and were hit by the lava, they would probably die. Next, the crystal tide would erupt once every minute. The group of dragonflies flew back and forth in the sky. After a few rounds, the flame butterfly clan actually managed to capture a lot of eternal flame crystals. They even found 2 red, orange, and yellow eternal flame crystals, which were caught by a female dragonfly. Looking at the size of a dragonfly, she should be quite young. However, at this time, a group of crocodiles on the ground walked up with bad intentions. The leader was a large crocodile covered in black armor. He was probably the leader of this group. The leader arrogantly walked forward and stretched out a thick claw. "Hand it over." The group of dragonflies immediately retreated. Everyone's eyes turned dark blue. Clearly, they were very afraid of this leader. "Take what?" An old dragonfly plucked up the courage to ask. The leader sneered. "Don't think I didn't see it. You can take the other crystals, but you must leave the 2 tricolored crystals for me." "Why?" The old dragonfly was a little angry. The leader said proudly, "Just based on this." At the same time, his body swayed, and a scream came from the crowd. When they turned their heads, they saw that the little dragonfly had fallen to the ground. Her front claws were broken, and she kept flapping her wings on the ground. She seemed to be in great pain. As for the 2 eternal flame crystals in his hand, they were now in the leader's hand. The leader fiddled with them without turning his head. I was already giving the flame butterfly clan some face by not killing all of you previously. Don't King look for trouble. Little Kai. The members of the flame butterfly clan cried out in alarm as they rushed toward the little dragonfly. Flame tribe members were formed from heat energy. Thus, when the little dragonfly's front claws were broken, they could see that it wasn't blood that flowed out of the wounds. Instead, it was light green flames. In fact, it was the same as human blood. As the blood flowed out, its life force would gradually decrease. Little rascal couldn't bear it. After all, this little dragonfly was still a larva. "Ding Ming, you can help her." Ding Ming was stunned. "How can I help?" "You can help," Xiao AI said decisively. "You're also a thermodynamic origin ability user, so the energy flowing in your body is quite pure. Also, don't forget that when you were the Xing Hong group, the inverse source crystal that you smelted has the healing effect of green life force. You only need to use your telekinesis to reconnect her broken limbs and inject some of your own energy into them. Is that so? Then I'll give it a try." Although Ding Ming had never been a merciful person, the flame butterfly clan had allowed him to come down. It wasn't good for him to just stand by and watch. Thus, it wasn't a problem for him to lend a hand. Ding Ming stretched out his left hand and twisted his fingers into a claw. He released a wave of telekinesis from a distance and gently reconnected the 2 broken limbs to the little dragonfly's front claws. Finally, he shook his fingers, and 5 rainbow-colored droplets of energy the size of water droplets appeared at the wounds. A miracle soon appeared. The little dragonfly's wounds were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This time, everyone was both surprised and delighted. They all turned to look at Ding Ming in disbelief. However, the old dragonfly had a good eye. It immediately realized that this was most likely an expert that Lord Kochi had called over to help. "Human friend, thank you. Thank you so much for healing little Kai." The old dragonfly took the initiative to fly to Ding Ming's side. Ding Ming waved his hand. "Is this how you were injured by the Flame Dragon clan?" The old dragonfly's eyes began to change color again. They became extremely red. It was obvious that it was very angry, but its tone was very helpless. The flame butterfly clan on this level relies on catching eternal flame crystals for a living. After we get the crystals, We sell them to the lords in the lower levels in exchange for energy and a place to live. However, the Flame Dragon clan is despicable. They don't know how to fly at all. After we get the crystals, they come up and threaten us. We've already lost a lot of people. Ding Ming nodded. I understand. They are robbing us. The old dragonfly flapped its wings. This is the border area. Lord Kochi can't control this place, so Ding Ming completely understood. The caretaker was only in charge of the entrance area. This place was beyond the scope of her authority. By the way, what's your name? Ding Ming could tell that this dragonfly was the leader of the Flame Butterfly clan. The old dragonfly said, Friend, you are a human. You can call me Fräulein in your language. Ding Ming was a little speechless. This strange name was strange enough. However, he was too lazy to explain. How about this? If I help you get the crystals back, can you give me some? Fräulein was a little dumbfounded. You, a human, dare to ask the Flame Dragon clan for crystals? Are you crazy? Seeing that she was a little dazed, Ding Ming was a little impatient. His time was very precious. Can you do it or not? If you can't, I will rob you. You. Fräulein was completely stunned. She was shocked by Ding Ming's tone. The leader of the Flame Dragon clan didn't leave. He also looked at Ding Ming and sneered. Ignorant and weak human. Do you think you are strong just because you can come down here? How are you going to get the crystals from me? Kneel down and kowtow to me? Then I'm sorry. I'm in a bad mood today. I won't give it to you. Are you done? Ding Ming slowly walked forward. Seeing that he really had the guts to come forward, the leader was a little impressed. Haha, you are from the God War Starfield? Ding Ming didn't waste time. He copied the leader and opened his right hand. Give it to me. The group of crocodiles burst into laughter. This kid is living in a dream. Ha ha, he is indeed not awake. Shorty, you have never seen the crystal well, right? I will let you go down and take a bath. Then a crocodile walked forward and rubbed its fists with bad intentions. Ding Ming looked at him coldly. He didn't speak, but his eyes were a little sharp. The crocodile seemed to be rubbing his fist, but in fact he was secretly wagging his thick tail. In fact, the two most powerful parts of a crocodile were its mouth and its tail. Both were sharp weapons, let alone the flame dragon crocodile of the Flame Planet. Kid, bear with it. It won't hurt. It will be over soon. The crocodile suddenly twisted its body and swept its tail with red flames at Ding Ming like a steel whip. Not to mention how great the force was. Just the layer of red flames alone had a temperature of over 1,000 degrees. Logically speaking, as long as it was an ordinary person, they would either be swept away or burned to death. Unfortunately, Ding Ming was not an ordinary human. He didn't even move. When the crocodile swept its tail at him, he casually reached out and grabbed it. The red flames didn't burn his hand. Instead, they mysteriously disappeared. Very fast indeed. After saying this, Ding Ming gently pulled. The 5-meter-tall crocodile was forcibly dragged to the ground. The group was dumbfounded. Where the hell did this human come from? How did he have so much strength? While everyone was still dumbfounded, Ding Ming swung his hand, and the crocodile was flung into the air. It screamed and struggled. When they turned around, they saw that it had landed right in the middle of the crystal well. Plop! TCH. As soon as the huge crocodile came into contact with the lava, it instantly turned into white smoke. Even the white smoke was instantly swallowed by the lava. Ding Ming clapped his hands and muttered to himself, I wonder if the next crystal tide will spray out better crystals if I throw someone down there. The leader was stunned for 2 seconds before he quickly roared, Motherf **, go. Throw this kid into the crystal well, now. The dozen or so crocodiles immediately pounced on Ding Ming. Their movements could not be seen clearly by the dragonflies of the flame butterfly race because they were too fast. However, even though the crocodiles were fast, Ding Ming was even faster. Ding Ming seemed to split into many afterimages all of a sudden. After a series of crackling sounds, more than 10 crocodiles once again flew up into the sky, kicking and clawing with their limbs. Struggling was useless. When Ding Ming attacked, he also used telekinesis to bind them. It would be strange if they could break free. Plop, plop, plop. TCH, 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 TCH. This time, what came out of the deep pit was no longer flames. Instead, it was white smoke. All the crocodiles were melted, and the air was filled with a very unpleasant burnt smell. Give it to me. Ding Ming stretched out his hand again. The leader was stunned. He decisively threw the two tricolor eternal flame crystals into the air. Take it. I don't want it anymore. I still have something to do, so I'll leave first. He thought that Ding Ming would reach out to catch the crystals so that he could take the opportunity to slip away. In fact, he was not slow. He turned around and reached the bottom of the hill. If he continued forward, he would be dozens of meters away. The whole process took less than a second. Even the dragonflies of the flame butterfly race were not as fast as him. This was the main reason why the dragonflies were afraid of him. However, just as he was about to enter the entrance of cave, Ding Ming's figure appeared in front of him like a ghost. He spread his hands and said, "Give it to me. I've already given it to you." The crocodile wanted to cry. F***CK. It was fine that he was fast, but why was this human even more ruthless than him when it came to snatching things? Chapter 528. You're giving it to me? Ding Ming sneered. Under his telekinesis vision, there were no secrets on his opponent's body. Don't think I can't see what you're hiding. Okay, I'll give it all to you. The crocodile pretended to lower his head to retrieve the bundle on his belt. The moment he lowered his head, his tail also ignited with flames and swept towards Ding Ming. This guy was quite strong. The source flames were actually red and orange in color, and the shape was a bit like the blazing sun battle pattern. Not only was it fast, but it was also very powerful. Unfortunately, although he swept it quite well, Ding Ming was no longer there. Give it to me. Ding Ming still said the same two words, but he was already behind the crocodile. This is the third time. The crocodile turned around in shock. He didn't even know how Ding Ming had gotten behind him. Was it a martial technique? Was it teleportation? Or was it absolute speed? He had no idea. I'll fight you to the death. The crocodile now knew that this human was a tough nut to crack. If he didn't fight now, when would he? The way he fought was also very smart. He jumped up, opened his mouth, revealed a row of sharp steel teeth, and bit Ding Ming's neck. His body weighed at least 6 or 7 tons. Even if he couldn't bite you, he could still crush you to death. Ding Ming didn't even bother to look at him. He casually slapped him. This was really a clear slap. Even the dragonflies in the distance saw it clearly, but for some reason, the crocodile couldn't dodge. With a crisp slap, the crocodile's thick body was sent flying by this slap. He crashed into a mountain wall and fell down. However, his skin was thick, and he wasn't afraid of being hit. He jumped up like a carp. However, at this moment, he was fuming because Ding Ming had taken away the bundle on his belt at some point. Ding Ming opened the bundle and took a look. Hey, there's a lot of stuff. I wonder if it's enough? Little rascal said. It looks like it's full of energy. It's barely enough. Get back to me. The crocodile was furious and rushed forward again. All right, I'll give them back to you. Ding Ming poured out dozens of 3-color crystals and threw the empty bag back. This kind of bag was the kind of anti-gravity backpack in the human world. It looked like it was made of cloth, but it was actually made of high-grade fiber fused with special metals. It did not have much lethality, but when Ding Ming threw it back, it turned into a cannonball and whizzed towards the crocodile. The crocodile did not even have time to react. Boom! A large mass of energy exploded, and even the air was torn apart. Crocodile was blasted hundreds of meters away, like a dead dog. This flame dragon was really tough. Red flames burst out of the crocodile's temple, but only a few scales fell off. He didn't dare to continue fighting and rolled into a hole, then disappeared. Ding Ming was too lazy to pay attention to that guy. He was just a high-level war elder. In front of him, he didn't even have the interest to beat him up. Fu Laoshi led a group of dragonflies and flew down. Fu Laoshi's eyes became deep blue again, and her tone became anxious. Friend, it's not good. You should leave quickly. Leave? Why should I leave? Ding Ming was puzzled. I've already taken back the item. Do you want me to run? That doesn't make sense. Fu Laoshi said. You let that guy run away. He must have gone back to get reinforcements. The Flame Dragon Tribe's troops are very likely to come here. Then let them come. What's there to be afraid of? Ding Ming looked indifferent. All right. Fu Laoshi was speechless. Although Ding Ming's strength seemed to be understated, it was actually stronger than anyone present. Ding Ming opened his palm. These are all 3-colored eternal flame crystals. I'll take 10 of them, and you can have the rest. How about that? Fu Laoshi really wanted to say no, but these 30-odd eternal flame crystals were all stolen from them by the Flame Dragon Tribe. Without Ding Ming's help, they could forget about getting a single one back. Now that Ding Ming took 10 of them, no matter how much her heart ached, she could only repeat, all right. After returning the crystals to this group of people, Ding Ming said, by the way, how often does this crystal tide erupt? Fu Laoshi flapped her wings. That's hard to say. Sometimes it erupts once every 2 or 3 days. Sometimes it's once every 10 minutes or so. In any case, it's been the peak period for the cast fire rock to erupt. All right, Ding Ming pointed at the highest cliff in the north. You can continue mining crystals. If there's nothing important, don't disturb me. Before coming here, he had already scanned the entire cave. There was a small cave on the northern cliff that was very suitable for solo cultivation. Moreover, it was very close to the crystal well. If he didn't have enough crystals, he could go down and mine them at any time. Again, with the help of telekinesis, mining crystals from lava streams of over 100,000 degrees was a piece of cake. Now that he had obtained the eternal flame crystals, the first thing he had to do was scan them. Ding Ming's strength was no longer the same as when he had been at the Starbao Corporation. He didn't need any sort of sensor cabin to dilute this inverse source crystal. He could just use his multidimensional vision to inspect it. After a careful scan, Little Rascal and Little Love came to the same conclusion. This eternal flame crystal could be considered a branch of the inverse source crystal. The inverse source crystal was the essence of origin energy that had gradually formed in the universe's long river of time. It was pure energy that could be directly absorbed by any element. However, the eternal flame crystal was more simple. It was the essence of origin energy formed in a high-temperature environment. Whether it was in terms of quality, content, or crystallization effect, it was far inferior to the inverse source crystal. This didn't mean that only thermodynamics cultivators could absorb it. Other elements could definitely do so as well. However, one would need to have a conversion technique or secret art. In short, the process was very troublesome. For thermodynamics cultivators, however, this thing could be directly used. Ding Ming controlled the eternal flame crystal and placed it in the center of his forehead. He simultaneously activated the origin point and the diamond star melting art. A large amount of pure heat entered his body and gathered in his heart through his blood. Then, this energy was transferred to the 9th and 10th points in his brain. He then used the diamond star melting art to refine it 5 times. After refining it 5 times, the energy had turned into a light green energy. The next step was simple. He used the green energy to construct a polyhedron between the origin points and then continuously spread it throughout his body. It was the same principle as when he first refined the diamond mirror and strengthened his body. Back when Ding Ming was still weak, he had spent a lot of effort to construct the diamond mirror. Every time, he had to endure the pain in order to shorten the time. In the end, this was because he had a solid foundation. Refining this eternal flame crystal was just too easy. 10 3-colored eternal flame crystals were refined in less than 3 hours. The changes to his body couldn't be felt immediately. However, when he opened his palm and formed a knife hand shape, he released a small amount of origin energy. A small flame shot out from his palm. The flame had been golden before, but now it was a light yellow color. This proved that his origin energy had evolved slightly. This amount of eternal flame crystals is too little, and the quality isn't high either. Little Rascal wasn't satisfied with this small change. We need more and better quality eternal flame crystals. Ding Ming sighed. Let's find the flame butterflies and think of a way. In the past few hours, another 7 or 8 eternal flame crystals had erupted from the crystal well. Since the flame dragons weren't harassing them anymore, Fu Laoshi and the others had obtained quite a good harvest. They had obtained more than 80 eternal flame crystals, but most of them were flame crystals. They had obtained about 10 two-colored eternal flame crystals, but only a few three-colored eternal flame crystals. Ding Ming ran down and arrived at a small hill. Where can I get better eternal flame crystals? Fu Laoshi replied, the best eternal flame crystals on this floor are three-colored eternal flame crystals. Friend Ding Ming, if you need better eternal flame crystals, you'll have to go deeper. We don't have the strength to go down there. Ding Ming thought to himself. According to the pattern of the origin energy flames underground, he would most likely reach the green-colored origin energy region. It wasn't that he couldn't go down there, but to be safe, it was best to evolve his green-colored origin energy. It seemed that he would have to spend some time on the 30th floor. At that moment, the entire cave began to tremble slightly. The flame butterflies flew back into the sky, as if they were preparing for the next crystal wave. Something's not right. Ding Ming frowned. This tremor isn't coming from the crystal well. Fu Laoshi looked down and found that the lava flow in the crystal well was very calm. There were no signs of an explosion. At that moment, Ding Ming's gaze fell on the largest cave in the south. Fu Laoshi wasn't stupid. She had obviously sensed that something was wrong. She decisively said, "Everyone, quickly retreat." The cave began to tremble more and more violently. Not long after, it was as if the earth was quaking and the mountains were shaking. The walls of the cave were constantly on fire. Soon, an enormous crocodile appeared. This crocodile was at least twice the size of the previous leader. It was 10 meters long and covered in crimson scales. Even from a distance, one could feel its astonishing aura. The previous leader was here as well. It seemed that this crocodile was the reinforcements he had called for. "It's Di Luo." Fu Laoshi's eyes suddenly turned dark blue. She was clearly terrified. "Oh." Ding Ming narrowed his eyes. "Who is Di Luo?" Fu Laoshi seemed very nervous. "He's the leader of the Flame Dragon tribe. He's a very powerful leader on this floor." "Is he very powerful?" Ding Ming looked at the crocodile with great interest. He wasn't paying attention to the power of this crocodile. Instead, he was paying attention to the few bags tied around the crocodile's waist. "Boss, that's the guy who robbed me of my crystal." The leader pointed at Ding Ming. Di Luo had already stopped at the entrance of the cave. He seemed to be very surprised. "How come it's a human? You were actually robbed by a human? Trash." The leader didn't dare to say anything else. This kind of thing would indeed be a bit shameful. However, this human in front of him was not an ordinary human being. He did have some skills. Di Luo suddenly waved his hand at Ding Ming and said, "Kid, get over here." Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh and said, "Sorry, I don't have time." Di Luo was a bit angry. "Do you want to die? All right, if you don't want to come over, I'll come over." Chapter 529. Luo's speed was obviously faster than the leader's. His movement style was dashing. In just a few dashes, he had already reached the bottom of the hill, giving people the impression that he was using some kind of martial skill. Luo stood still, pointed at Ding Ming and the others and said, "Everybody, kneel down and give me all your crystals, or I will kill you all." Fu Laoshi was about to answer, but was stopped by Ding Ming. Ding Ming slowly walked down the hill and said, "Sorry, I don't have the habit of kneeling down." Luo laughed viciously and said, "You human, how dare you come down here? I will teach you how to kneel down today." He suddenly dashed up, reached in front of Ding Ming in the blink of an eye, and threw a slap towards Ding Ming's face. His claw was even bigger than Ding Ming's entire body. When he waved his hand, a stream of golden yellow original power flame was spurted out, which also took shape and looked like a folding fan. Ding Ming suddenly flashed and was already 5 meters away. Luo was a bit surprised and said, "You little human, you have some speed." Ding Ming laughed and said, "If I didn't have some speed, how would I dare to rob your Fire Dragon Clan's crystals?" Hearing this, He Luo was a bit angry and said, "Where are the crystals? Give them to me." Ding Ming laughed and said, "Sorry, I have already eaten your crystals." He Luo was furious, then spit them out. He Luo was about to attack again, but Ding Ming suddenly waved his hand and said, "All right, I will spit them out for you." After saying this, Ding Ming took a deep breath, then let out a puff of air. Apparently, it wasn't ordinary air, but a cloud that contained pure original power. The cloud seemed to be soft and gentle, but once it bumped into He Luo, who had dashed up, it instantly exploded along with a popping sound. Di Luo took a few steps backwards, and when he raised his head again, Ding Ming had already moved to the edge of the crystal well, and was no longer where she had been standing before. A trace of surprise flashed across He Luo's face. But in the next moment, his surprise turned into anger because Ding Ming was playing with a bundle. Not bad, there are quite a lot of things. This bag was one of the many bags on Di Luo's belt, which contained a large number of crystals. None of them were ordinary fire crystals. Almost all of them were three-colored eternal flame crystals. There were a total of 50 of them, and a few of them were four-colored eternal flame crystals. Ding Ming took out a crystal that was shining with red, orange, yellow, and green lights. He put it in front of his eyes and examined it carefully. Then, he raised his head and swallowed the crystal in one gulp. What the hell? This time, not only Di Luo and the others were dumbfounded, even Mrs. Fu and the others were dumbfounded. He actually dared to eat eternal flame crystals. Aren't you afraid of being burned to death? Of course, they didn't know that with Ding Ming's diamond star fusing art, he could eat a pile of artificial silver core stones, not to mention a single crystal. Do you want me to spit it out? Ding Ming looked at He Luo with a smile. Bastard! He Luo was instantly enraged. He darted up like an arrow. This time, he used both his hands and feet. At the same time, he curled up his body and swept his tail fiercely. Streaks of origin energy flames sliced towards Ding Ming like blade lights. It felt as if this was no longer as simple as a giant alligator of the flame dragon tribe. He was practically an expert with a blade, and he brandished a dazzling array of origin energy blade lights. Boom, 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 boom. A huge explosion came from the edge of the crystal well. It was the kind of explosion that would cause dust and sparks to fly in all directions. Ding Ming was basically enveloped by the flame. However, after the flame faded, the scene of being burnt to a crisp didn't happen, because Ding Ming had disappeared again. He Luo turned around in surprise, and found that Ding Ming had actually returned to where he was just now. Now, Ding Ming didn't have one bag in his hands, but two. He Luo looked down and found that another bag was missing from his belt. Ding Ming had taken it away without anyone noticing. But this wasn't the most infuriating part, because Ding Ming took out all the four-colored crystals from the first bag and threw the entire bag to Fräulein. Fräulein and the others reacted very quickly to the eternal flame crystals. They immediately flew over and grabbed the bag, their faces filled with ecstasy. He Luo hadn't even touched the corner of Ding Ming's clothes for a few times in a row. Instead, he had lost 2 bags of precious crystals for nothing. This was really like going for wool and coming home shorn. Maybe it wasn't as simple as rice, but 2 bags of real wealth. He Luo took a deep breath, forcibly suppressed the anger in his heart, and said in a deep voice, "Kid, what's the point of hiding here and there? If you have the guts, take one attack from me. I'll admit defeat." Ding Ming laughed and said, "One attack." He Luo said seriously, "That's right, 1 attack is enough." Ding Ming said, "All right, I'll take 1 attack from you." This time, He Luo didn't dare to underestimate Ding Ming anymore. After secretly increasing his origin energy, the fiery red scales on his body suddenly turned into orange spikes, and at the same time emitted a dazzling light, which looked like a huge ball of light. The ball of light rushed over like a tank. The power of this ball of light was so strong that even Fu Lao-Shi and the others, who were standing on the hillside, were forced to fly backwards. It was obvious that Di Luo was quite powerful, otherwise he wouldn't have been able to become the leader of this level. However, the situation now was different. Facing the ball of light that was flying towards him, Ding Ming had already formed his hand blade and threw out a backhand chop. This time it wasn't a cut, but a chop, a head-on chop from top to bottom. Gotcha! A crisp sound was heard, and all the orange lights disappeared at once. Di Luo stepped backward again, but this time when he was halfway back, an invisible wave of air exploded in the air and hit right on his forehead. This explosion was no small matter. It directly hit him and made him sit on the ground, sliding backwards like a dead dog. Ding Ming was still standing in the same place, as if he hadn't even moved a bit. Di Luo raised his head in shock. Only he himself knew what had happened at that moment. When Ding Ming's hand chop was thrown out, it seemed that his entire hand chop was wrapped by a layer of transparent air, which directly shattered all the power source coating on his body and pushed him back at the same time. However, it seemed that the hand chop also contained some kind of vibration power. Normally speaking, fire dragons shouldn't be afraid of these small tricks of human beings. However, this small trick of Ding Ming's had made him feel so uncomfortable, as if his insides had been turned upside down. This human being was a real powerful one. He was definitely not a half-baked one. At the moment, Di Luo felt very embarrassed. To be honest, if he continued to fight, he didn't have much confidence that he could kill Ding Ming. However, if he retreated now, those 2 bags of crystal stones would. Thinking of those crystal stones, Di Luo's heart ached. He couldn't stand it. Suddenly, Di Luo had an idea. He sat down on the ground with his legs crossed, took down the remaining 4 bags from his belt, then spread them out in front of himself in a fan shape. Kid, you win. These 4 bags are all filled with eternal flame crystals. If you have the ability to take them all away today, I'll admit defeat, said Di Luo while gnashing his teeth in anger. Di Luo had a good idea, because if Ding Ming dared to come up and take those bags, Di Luo would have another chance. After all, those 4 bags were baits. However, Ding Ming couldn't help but laugh out loud. This old crocodile was indeed cunning. Di Luo had put those 4 bags out in front of Ding Ming, so Ding Ming had no choice but to go and take them away. Indirectly, he'd save his own life. It's as easy as flipping my hand for me to take those 4 bags of yours, said Ding Ming with a smile. Di Luo yelled angrily. Anyone could talk big. Come and take them if you dare. I don't need to come at all, said Ding Ming while casually waving his hand. Following his move, the leftmost bag miraculously rose from the ground and slowly flew towards Ding Ming. This, Di Luo was dumbfounded. What kind of evil magic was this? He could even take things from a distance. I don't care how you do it, the more the better. You don't have to come back, but when I find you, you won't be able to die even if you want to. Ding Ming waved his hand expressionlessly. Chapter 530. Ding Ming didn't let Di Luo go out of kindness. The main reason was that he needed to melt these 6 bags of crystal stones, and he didn't want to be disturbed. As for whether Di Luo had run away, gone to get help, or really went to look for crystal stones, no one would dare to come to this place in a short period of time. Ding Ming. Lord Ding Ming. Fu Lao-Shi flew over. She had good eyesight. When she saw that the leader of the Fire Dragon tribe couldn't even struggle in front of Ding Ming, she knew that Lord Kochi had called him over to help. Therefore, she even changed the way she addressed him. If you want 3 colored crystals, we can help you keep an eye out for the crystal tide. Ding Ming waved his hand and said, if you can find them, you can leave half of them for me. You can use the other half yourselves. This time, Fu Lao-Shi didn't feel distressed at all. With Ding Ming here, who would dare to come here and cause trouble? They could take this crystal well and excavate the eternal flame crystals. As for giving half of them to Ding Ming, it would be a piece of cake. Not to mention half. She was even willing to give most of it to Ding Ming. Of course, with the energy he had just absorbed, Ding Ming could now refine the eternal flame crystals on the cliff with peace of mind. The effect of the four-colored eternal flame crystals was far better than the three-colored or two-colored ones. The source flow produced by them was equal to the source essence that Ding Ming obtained after refining the source energy he had absorbed normally 10 times. Little Rascal said, when the source energy is refined to a certain level, not only will it change color, but it will also change shape. This principle is similar to the blazing sun battle pattern. You can give it a try. Ding Ming stretched out his palms and formed a hand knife. With a bang, the hand knife ignited with a light green flame. With a shake of his hands, the green flame left his hands and turned into the same hand knife shape. It looked like two green blades. Using his telekinesis, the blades could fly back and forth in the air. After circling for a long time, they flew back and merged back into Ding Ming's palms. In the past, this was extremely difficult to achieve. Whether it was the release of source energy or the blazing sun battle runes, it could only be released and not retracted. This was like a photoelectric gun, which could only be fired but not retracted. Moreover, the rays that were fired were all straight and could not be adjusted. But now, source energy could be retracted and released freely. Little Rascal said in a deep voice, Ding Ming, you have finally completed your foundational skills. From the perspective of the Mao Star civilization, congratulations, Ding Ming, you have become a true warrior. Ding Ming really wanted to scream. With his current strength, he could only be considered a warrior by Mao Xing standards. Isn't there an 11th origin? Ding Ming was a little confused. There is. Little Rascal sighed. But now that your foundation has taken shape, you can consider cultivating other skills. The 11th origin isn't something you can cultivate just because you want to. It requires a lot of luck and coincidence. Xiao AI said, the Federal Empire's skills are too weak. Right now, you can consider how to properly utilize the enormous power in your body. My suggestion is that you can evolve your 3 major skills, Diamond Star Sword Technique, Wings of Light, and Heavenly Sword 13 styles. These skills all require divine light weapons to complement them. Catoptric deflection is no longer as important as it used to be. After that, Ding Ming activated the anti-gravity force field and began a long period of cultivation in the elementary consciousness space. During this time, Fu Laoshi and the other members of the Flame Butterfly race really did bring a lot of 3-colored eternal flame crystals to Ding Ming. There were a total of 88 3-colored eternal flame crystals. Whether it was the size or the quality, they were all quite good. The most laughable thing was that Di Luo had actually returned. This time, however, he wasn't looking for trouble. Instead, he led a group of subordinates to deliver a few dozen bags of various sizes to Ding Ming. Of course, these crystals weren't all 3-colored or 4-colored eternal flame crystals. There were also a large number of fire crystals mixed in. With Ding Ming's current absorption ability, even high-grade fire crystals were dispensable. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. It was better to have something than nothing. The key was that Ding Ming was too lazy to find the crystals himself. Getting ready-made crystals was the way to go. In fact, Di Luo wasn't convinced. He was just hoping for a fluke when he delivered the crystals. The group of old crocodiles put the bags on the hillside and then began to think. Ding Ming had been sitting cross-legged on the cliff all this time. His eyes were closed, and he didn't move at all. No one knew what he was doing. It seemed like he was resting. However, as soon as the bags were put down, all of them opened automatically. The crystals inside flew towards Ding Ming as if they were magic. Ding Ming was like a magnet, sucking all of the eternal flame crystals away. Seeing this, Di Luo and the other old crocodiles immediately gave up on their mischievous thoughts. Di Luo even took the initiative to find Fu Laoshi. When will Lord Ding wake up? Fu Laoshi was very vigilant. What do you want? Di Luo coughed and said, nothing. I was just thinking that since Lord Ding is so powerful, This floor is definitely not a place where he can stay for long. Fu Lao sure agreed with him. From the perspective of the Fire Clan, Ding Ming's power was at least at the 40th floor underground. This was definitely not a place where he could stay for long. Moreover, Ding Ming was a human being. Therefore, sooner or later, he would have to go down. It is exactly because Lord Ding is a human being that he needs the eternal flame crystals. Hidi Luo said mysteriously. Fu Lao sure immediately realized that Ding Ming must be absorbing the eternal flame crystals. This was not to increase his power, but to strengthen his body's resistance. After all, humans were different from the Fire Clan. Humans needed to use their origin energy to resist the high temperature, while the Fire Clan could adapt to all kinds of high temperatures. If the Fire Clan wanted to go down to the deeper areas, they needed to pass the test of the quenching pool and evolve. Fu Lao sure immediately understood what Hidi Luo was thinking. You mean, you have a way to go down without going through the quenching pool? Hidi Luo said, don't you want to go down? Fu Lao sure said, if you don't go through the quenching pool, you won't be able to evolve. If you go down, you will be killed by other clans. That's not necessarily true. Hidi Luo decisively denied and said in a low voice, Lord Ding needs the eternal flame crystals. Let's go and collect them for him. If he has them, we will have them too. If we have the 5-colored eternal flame crystals, we will be able to evolve. The color of Fu Laoshi's eyes kept changing. Obviously, she was already moved by this idea. After all, the goal of the Fire Clan was to evolve. The process was not that important. After all roads lead to Rome. But we don't know when Lord Ding Ming will wake up. Fu Laoshi was also a bit anxious. She was not as anxious as Ding Ming himself. The process of absorbing and quenching this batch of eternal flame crystals was way too complicated. It would take a long time to quench out the pure, dark green original power. Even with the support of the anti-gravity force field, 1,000 hours would pass in the blink of an eye, which meant that over 10 days had already passed in the real world. However, although Ding Ming was in the middle of cultivation, he clearly knew what was going on in the outside world. Therefore, the first thing he said after waking up was, lead the way. Lead the way for what? Asked Hidi Luo in surprise. Ding Ming said blandly, go down. I'll leave the task of finding the crystal well to you. If you find the 5-colored crystals, don't worry, I won't mistreat you. Without saying another word, Hidi Luo turned around and left. A group of crocodiles rushed into the depths of the cave. Fu Laoshi and a group of dragonflies surrounded Ding Ming and followed behind them. As Hidi Luo had expected, he didn't choose the quenching pool. Instead, he chose a very well-hidden cave about 3,000 miles away from the crystal well. This cave was quite small, about the size of a private room. In the middle of the cave, the air seemed to have been torn apart by a space crack. It looked like a swirl of stars, but also like a black hole. Inside the space crack, nothing could be seen clearly. Hidi Luo, Fu Lao, and the others might not know what this thing was, but Ding Ming, Little Rascal, and Little Love could tell at first glance that it was a space-time crack. Perhaps it was not accurate to describe it as a space-time crack, because this space-time crack was way too small to teleport people far away. Can we go down from this place? Asked Ding Ming. Yes. Hidi Luo nodded affirmatively and said, I've been down there before. Ding Ming frowned and asked, when did you find this place? A few years ago, said Hidi Luo. How many years? Asked Ding Ming. About 3 years, said Hidi Luo. Ding Ming didn't say anything, because he had already realized that this small black hole was definitely not formed naturally. It was definitely man-made. The problem was, creating something like this required energy and equipment, but this black hole had existed for at least 3 years. What on earth did it rely on to keep it running for such a long time? Let's go down, said Ding Ming decisively. From the 31st layer to the 40th layer, just as Ding Ming had expected, it was no longer a golden world, but a green world. All the original power flames had changed their color. However, because of the recent cultivation, Ding Ming now only needed to use 4 of the original power points inside his body. Since they were in the border area, it was not easy for them to be discovered by other fire-kind creatures. Therefore, Ding Ming and the others decided to search for crystal wells everywhere. It turned out that Ding Ming had made the right decision to let Hidi Luo go. Hidi Luo and the other old crocodiles didn't have any other skills, but they were good at finding crystal wells. No matter how remote or far away a crystal well was, they could always find it. However, the progress of the 10 layers was much slower. Ding Ming relied on Hidi Luo and the other old crocodiles to collect eternal flame crystals for him. And Hidi Luo and the other old crocodiles also needed eternal flame crystals to change their forms. Therefore, from the 31st layer to the 40th layer, it took them a whole 2,500 hours, which equaled to 3 months. Fu Lao and the other old crocodiles had already evolved into butterflies from dragonflies, while Hidi Luo and the other old crocodiles had evolved into something similar to a Tyrannosaurus rex. The water droplet suddenly popped out and said, "This is the evolutionary route of the flame butterflies and flame dragons. When they reach the limit of evolution, they will become ancient butterflies and dragons. However, these people are not talented enough, and reaching this level is the limit." Ding Ming nodded and said, "Let's keep going." Chapter 531. Starting from the 41st floor, Fu Lao, Di Luo, and the others could no longer follow Ding Ming. Down here, it was already a pure cyan world, and the temperature generated by the cyan flame was as high as 80,000 degrees. Ding Ming found it difficult to move forward again. By now, he needed to circulate his power at the highest limit of 6 points to resist the flame. Ding Ming still chose to move from the border. To be honest, it was not difficult for him to find a crystal well by himself, but it was time-consuming. Fortunately, there were almost no living creatures in the depths of the Earth's core. However, the speed of their advance was getting slower and slower. 43rd floor, 44th floor, 45th floor, 46th floor. When they reached the 52nd floor with difficulty, Ding Ming could not hold it in anymore. "Xiao AI, how long has it been?" Xiao AI sighed. "What I want to tell you is that a year has passed in the real world." Ding Ming was silent. He did not expect time to pass so quickly. In other words, he had been cultivating crazily for more than a year. The efficiency of this cultivation was far greater than the 3 years he spent on the expedition. The problem was that he still had not found any clues about the Maoxing civilization, and he did not know what the situation on the surface was like. "Let's continue," Ding Ming said again. "It's very difficult to go further down. If there's no other way, let's go back." Little Rascal hesitated. She knew that Ding Ming was so persistent because of her. If they could find some clues about the Maoxing civilization, although it was not enough to return to the Maoxing civilization 120 billion light years away, wouldn't it be wonderful if they could meet someone of the same kind? "It's okay. I can handle it." Ding Ming secretly activated the 7th origin. Now, the surroundings were filled with deep blue flames. The entire world was blue. It was so blue that it was like a dream. It was also blue like the netherworld. No one knew what would happen if they went further down. According to the information provided by the database, the levels of flames below Planet Extreme Flame were red, orange, green, cyan, blue, and purple. In other words, when the surrounding flames turned purple, that was probably the limit. Little Rascal said, "Not necessarily. According to my point of view, it should be red, orange, green, cyan, blue, purple, black, white, rainbow, transparent, formless, and formless." Transparent? Formless and formless? Ding Ming and Xiao AI found it hard to comprehend. They could imagine black origin energy flames, but they couldn't imagine transparent and formless flames no matter how hard they racked their brains. Little Rascal said, "You can't simply view it as origin energy. You should try to understand it from the perspective of energy. Red is naturally the true color. This is the origin color of all things in the universe." All of the light suddenly shot out from the ground and gathered in midair. Ding Ming decisively retreated. He could already sense the danger. A purple object was forming in midair. A moment later, a butterfly similar to the one Fu Lao and the others had seen appeared. The butterfly's body was actually that of a woman. This woman was almost exactly the same as a human. She had a voluptuous body, a beautiful face, and a head of fiery red hair that rose to the sky. On top of a pair of blue butterfly wings, there was a pair of grayish-brown, six-winged wings. The butterfly's body was about the same size as a normal human. As it floated in the air, it gave off a frightening feeling. This was because Little Love's calculations had already been completed. Her battle index is actually as high as 8 billion points. 8 billion points. How heaven-defying was that? This was a mid-level battle saint. It was simply too frightening. Just as Ding Ming was about to activate the origin, the butterfly actually spoke first. Her voice was crisp and full of authority. "Hello, Ding Ming. I have been waiting for you for a long time. Congratulations on coming to my territory." Ding Ming was stunned. "You recognize me?" The butterfly spun in a circle in the air. "You have been moving about in the territory of the Inferno butterfly tribe. I know your every move very well. I had originally planned to meet you 10 years later. I didn't expect you to arrive in such a short time. The Starmouth warriors truly live up to their reputation." Ding Ming frowned. "Who exactly are you?" The butterfly landed on the ground and leisurely walked towards Ding Ming. "Don't be nervous. I'm just a thought." "Thought?" Ding Ming almost thought that his ears were playing tricks on him. "You are so powerful, but you're just a thought? Who would believe that?" Ding Ming secretly activated his telekinesis vision. He was shocked to discover that the butterfly really wasn't spouting nonsense. The butterfly appeared to be a creature of the Inferno race, but it was actually a transparent ball of light. It was just like Little Rascal in its spiritual form. You could sense its existence, but you couldn't see its true form. "You can call me the Black Butterfly Demon Empress." The butterfly spoke again. Ding Ming immediately reacted. "You are the lord of the Inferno butterfly tribe." The Demon Empress said seriously, "That's right. I am the lord of the Inferno butterfly tribe. I'm also a friend of the Starmouth warriors." Ding Ming pondered for a moment before asking, "Where is your true form?" The Demon Empress replied, "I am everywhere." Ding Ming found this difficult to understand. Thankfully, the Demon Empress took the initiative to explain. "I'm always present in the territory of the Inferno butterfly tribe." Ding Ming asked, "Can you let me see your true form?" The Demon Empress stared at him. "Are you sure?" Ding Ming nodded. "Otherwise, it will be very difficult for me to believe you." It was clearly a weapon like an alloy blade, but when the other party threw it, the green flames around them surged. Then, the green flames were miraculously extinguished. A wave of coldness approached Ding Ming's eyelids. Little Rascal couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. This person is a dual cultivator of both heat and ice. The cold gleam of light didn't shoot out in a straight line. Instead, it shot out in a strange arc. Ding Ming didn't dodge. He quickly grabbed the gleam of light and looked down. It was actually a kukri blade. Ding Ming hesitated. Wasn't this the Gorka blade that Junling and the others usually used? Seeing Ding Ming casually catch such a powerful attack, the other party seemed to be stunned for a moment. They were probably shocked by Ding Ming's skills. While that person was still in a daze, the other person hesitantly shouted, "Ding Ming?" The voice was obviously female, and there was a slight tremor in it, as if she couldn't quite believe it. Ding Ming was stunned. The two beggar-like people in front of him were Junling and Lu Qing. The person who had wielded the saber was Junling. Junling's original appearance was completely unrecognizable. The prototype battle armor on her body had long been riddled with holes. The damage on it proved that not only had she been burned by layers of origin energy flames, but she had also experienced a large number of battles. Her originally bronze skin had now become even more charred. The only thing that hadn't changed was the aggressive temperament on her body. Lu Qing's space armor was almost completely melted. Her jacket and undergarments had long been burned away. Many places that shouldn't have been exposed were exposed. Lu Qing's hair was long, coarse, and dirty. Her body was covered in scars. If he didn't get closer, Ding Meng would never believe that the person in front of him was the beautiful and eye-catching Lu Qing. Of course, in the past 3 years, Ding Meng's image could only be said to be even worse than theirs. Ding Meng looked like a complete beast. Unexpectedly, Lu Qing suddenly pounced forward and hugged Ding Meng tightly. Her voice was choked with sobs. Ding Meng, we knew you weren't dead. You're really still alive. If this was in the past, Ding Meng would definitely be a little uncomfortable because Lu Qing was a whole head taller than him. Probably because she was too excited, this hug was tighter, completely pressing Ding Meng's head into her chest. The key was that her chest was also quite large. Ding Meng's face touched such a large piece of warm, fragrant jade, and he felt a little suffocated for a moment. However, he didn't push Lu Qing away. He could already feel Lu Qing's concern and excitement from this body movement. Ding Meng held her waist and gently pulled her to his side. He caressed her charred face. What happened? Why are you on this level? How did you end up like this? Lu Qing didn't answer.